Hello, I'm Frank Scarpitti. Want to welcome all of you to the City of Markham's Housing Summit. Thank you for joining us today for this very important event. I'd like to start off today by acknowledging that we walk upon the traditional territories of many Indigenous peoples, and we recognize their history, their spirituality, their culture, and the stewardship of this land. And we're grateful to all Indigenous groups for their commitment to protect the land and its resources. And we here at the City of Markham are committed to reconciliation, partnership, and enhanced understanding. Very honored this morning that we are going to be joined by the senior levels of government. And I thank them all for making time with their busy schedules to be here this morning. We want to thank and welcome Ahmed Hussen, Federal Minister of Families, Children and Social Development, the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, and the Provincial Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Steve Clark, for joining us this morning for this very important discussion. Again, thanks to all of them for being part of our program. I also want to welcome and say thank you to the members of Markham Council. I really appreciate their support for this issue. It's certainly important to them, and I want to thank them for being here this morning, along with some of my colleagues from York Regional Council as well. Almost 2 years ago, during my inaugural address, I made a commitment that we would hold a summit on affordable and rental housing. Why? Because it's something that's critically important to residents in our community, to businesses in our community, and I want to say that it's extremely important to our council as well. And since 2018, the issue has not disappeared. In fact, it's gotten worse. I'm increasingly concerned that in Markham, home ownership and even affordable rental is becoming more elusive for young people in our community. So whether it is a young family that's trying to plant roots in our community, to a recent graduate who's attracted to our new downtown area, or certainly a senior who wants to or needs to downsize and still wants to stay in our community. I hear regularly from residents that they love living in Markham, and I say that not just as the mayor, but I say it as someone who grew up here in Markham. I hear from people who've lived here for decades, to recent arrivals, and also to many who are actually on waiting lists for subsidized housing, Markham as their first choice within the region. We're a city that certainly has excellent amenities. We have a diversity of culture and certainly lots of opportunity, but the price of entry is just too high. Last year, we began stakeholder consultations en route to this summit, and certainly we began to finalize Markham's affordable and rental housing strategy. We've engaged with a wide variety of stakeholders, everyone from community housing advocates to service providers to developers in our community, and certainly to many individuals as well who have a particular interest in this topic, all trying to address the critical challenge that's facing our community, finding solutions to address the challenges of providing more affordable and rental housing in our community. Today, in many respects, is the culmination of all that work so far, the consultation, the input, and I do appreciate all the assistance that we received from many in dealing with this crisis. One thing is for sure, and I think you'll hear a constant theme, it is tough to do this alone. Not one level of government can do it. Money isn't always the answer. Certainly policy is not always the answer. And certainly the desire, the willingness to do this is not all that it takes to make it happen. We do need all three levels of government. We do need the developers in our community, and we do need the NGOs who've been successful in providing subsidized housing for those that need it in our community. So we are going to hear from the different levels of government in terms of what steps they have taken so far to deal with this crisis. You'll also hear about our draft strategy and have the opportunity for your ideas and your input into that strategy as we try to create a more diverse supply of housing in our community. And I'm truly excited for all of us to be able to listen to some incredible speakers this morning. In particular, Dr. Abby Friedman, who has been involved in affordable housing for decades. He's going to provide his expertise and advice of how to tackle this issue head on. We'll also hear from leaders in the housing industry, certainly people from the legal profession, employment and financial community, about the importance of increasing the supply of affordable housing in order to really provide for a complete community and to retain talent in our community and to ensure the long-term success, not just of Markham, but the GTA, indeed the province and the country. And really based on what we've heard so far from stakeholders throughout this journey to update our affordable rental housing strategy, really has been important input, but we're looking forward to hearing our speakers and to your engagements in the breakout sessions later in the program. Through the draft affordable and rental housing strategy, we understand the following things. One in 3 households in Markham are facing a housing affordability challenge. The average price of a resale home in Markham has doubled in the last 10 years. Markham house prices are 7.6 times the average incomes in our community. This is making home ownership unaffordable for the average family, and it's making it extremely difficult to find affordable rental in our community as well. Vacancy rates are at 1.2%, less than half of what's an accepted balanced rate, and an average market rent, the average market rent in our community is increasing faster than inflation. Every level of government and truly every sector plays an important role in housing development. Reaching the city's goals will require support of our partners, all of our partners, to make this happen. I'm looking forward to the continued commitment and partnership to help solve the housing challenges in Markham and your support as we finalize our strategy and implement the necessary changes to realize more affordable housing in our community. I'd like to thank our Markham staff. I often say we have a great council and we have just an outstanding staff. I'm very proud of them. They are leaders in their fields and they truly put Markham on the map every day. But they have truly been an integral part of seeing through the development and the execution of our housing strategy. I want to thank in particular Andy Taylor, our Chief Administrative Officer, Arvin Prasad, our Commissioner of Community Services, of Development Services. And I want to thank Arvin because truly he's relatively new compared to some of our staff at the City of Markham, but I'll tell you, he's just come in with an incredible amount of vigor, understands the goals and objectives of our council and our community. I'd also be remiss if I didn't thank not just the strategy, but also this particular summit today and for their ongoing work after this summit is over. Special thanks to Daryl Lyons and Emily Irvin, who led the way on this file and truly have been instrumental in developing the strategy and certainly putting together what I think is just an incredible program for us to move this issue forward. Later on, you will hear from Arvin as he steps into the role of Master of Ceremonies. And just to let you know that this morning's proceedings are being recorded and actually being streamed live through all of the City of Markham's social channels. And I certainly would like to welcome everyone who is part of our summit. And because of some of the logistics, particularly with the breakout rooms, we would have loved to opened up that process to a much bigger audience. But I'm so pleased for those of you that have been able to join and watch the live stream and listen to our presentations and speakers this morning. So with that, I now like to introduce a wonderful representative of the federal government who really has been an incredible champion in advancing a national housing strategy. As Minister, Ahmed Hussen has been hard at work with various levels of government to see that more units are built, including recent investments in modular housing. Minister Hussen recognizes that our long-term prosperity in this country hinges on the ability of Canadians to access housing that is affordable and available. I'm pleased that Minister Hussen has been able to join us today, and I do welcome you, Minister, to bring some greetings on behalf of the federal government.
It's really great to be here with partners from all orders of government and the private and nonprofit sector. One of the most valuable lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic and that Canadians expect us to continue is that we can really achieve a lot of extraordinary things when we come together around a common goal to help others. And as we all do our part to contain the spread of the COVID-19 virus, our homes have literally become a place of safety and refuge in these challenging times. But for far too many Canadians, affordable housing remains out of reach, especially for those living in the Greater Toronto area. Here, the demand for affordable housing has far outpaced the supply. Mayor Scarpitti, you referred to the very low vacancy rate in the region. The average GTA household pays over $1,450 each month in rent, and a 3-bedroom unit costs over $1,700. And in some parts of the GTA, that's actually much more than that. So investing in affordable housing is one of the most important ways we can help Markham families stay safe through this second wave of the pandemic and recover stronger in the months and years after this pandemic. So as you begin your summit today, I want to touch on a few federal initiatives that you can use to boost housing supply in Markham. First, as you said, Mayor Scarpitti, we recently launched the Rapid Housing Initiative, a 2-year, $1 billion program that quickly responds to the urgent housing needs created as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we made this program very easy. We want municipal governments, provinces, nonprofit organizations or indigenous governing bodies and organizations to use this program as long as they can demonstrate that they can build rapid housing, including modular housing, or this money can be used to acquire properties and convert them into housing in 12 months or less. And as long as you can demonstrate that and you target a vulnerable group of people, then you're eligible for the money. The team at Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation is delivering this program and is ready to get funding out the door very quickly. And Mayor Scarpitti, it is not just the housing that is rapid, it's also the way we're getting the money out the door. For projects here in Markham, the province, York Region, or nonprofit organizations, the Rapid Housing Initiative is there to help you to fulfill the requirements and the aspirations of those communities to build rapid housing for individuals experiencing homelessness. And they can apply for funding until December 31st of this year. As you say, the funding can be used to build modular housing, to buy land, convert existing buildings to affordable housing for those in severe housing need. And by doing that, we will stimulate the economy at a time when the building trades need a little bit of help. We will be creating good jobs when they are needed the most. At the same time, we know that communities can also get support for affordable housing projects through the longer-term programs of the National Housing Strategy. This $55 billion 10-year plan will strengthen the middle class, will remove 500,000 households from housing need, and will eliminate chronic homelessness. This is something that we have indicated in the speech from the throne, that we want to eliminate chronic homelessness from Canada. So the National Housing Strategy programs will boost housing supply, and we hope to exceed our targets and deliver strong results, of course, in partnership with municipalities like Markham and the province of Ontario. This includes several major projects that have already broken ground right across the GTA. Mayor Scarpitti, there's hardly a week or two that goes by when I'm not in the GTA announcing one or many housing projects that are being funded either in whole or in part by the National Housing Strategy. One of the most popular funding streams within the National Housing Strategy is the National Housing Co-Investment Fund, which supports projects that target our most vulnerable populations. And this fund provides loans and contributions to build or repair homes that are affordable, energy efficient, accessible, and close to schools, jobs, and services. The other program is the Rental Construction Financing Initiative. This is a way for us to work with private sector to put more rental units into the market, stabilizing prices, and hopefully bringing them down in the long term. So I've talked about our housing supply programs, but we also have 13 bilateral agreements between the Government of Canada and provinces and territories to fund their housing priorities. So here in Ontario, we have a Canada-Ontario 10-year bilateral housing agreement, which commits more than $5.75 billion in investments in community housing and other affordable housing priorities for the province of Ontario. So I know that you have a full day of discussions. I will close by thanking all of you for the great work that you're doing today and every day to make housing more affordable. And before I finish, we also introduced the Canada-Ontario Housing Benefit. Ontario was the first province to sign on to this cost matching program between Canada and Ontario. Under that program, we will advance collectively over $1.46 billion in direct rental supports to Ontarians who need the help now. So the Canada-Ontario Housing Benefit is a game changer because it is portable. So if someone moves from one community to another within Ontario, the rental supplements move with them. So we're here to work together. We're here to learn from you, to get your feedback, and to exceed the ambitions that have been stated in the National Housing Strategy. And we're here to work with you to get results for all of us and for Canadians. Thank you so much, Mayor Scarpitti, and I'm of course eager to hear the rest of the conference. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Minister Hussen. And I want to say not only thank you for being here this morning, but thank you for your passion. This isn't just a portfolio for you. This is a mission. And I just want to say thank you for everything you've personally done. And I'm confident that this government will continue to address the shortage of affordable housing. Thanks again. We're also honored this morning that Ontario Premier Doug Ford has made time to be a part of our program. And there is no doubt that the housing crisis is mission critical for his government. And truly under his leadership, Minister Clark and the whole government has done a lot to increase the amount of housing that's available in our communities, and also to certainly do what they can in speeding up approvals and cutting out the red tape. Now, the Premier is no stranger to the City of Markham. I have to say that our city has really enjoyed a great relationship with this provincial government. And I thank him most recently for the approvals that we got to move forward with a new campus for York University in the heart of Markham Centre, and also for everything that he and his ministers have done to continue to advance the Yonge subway extension all the way up to Highway 7. I certainly appreciate all of those efforts and look forward to the day that we can actually use those shovels that were signed to break ground on this very, very important project. Please welcome the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford.
I'd like to thank Mayor Scarpitti for inviting me to speak today on such an important topic. Mayor Scarpitti has been an outstanding leader for his community, and I want to thank him and his team for everything they're doing for the people of Markham. Even during a global pandemic, making housing more affordable remains one of my top priorities as Premier. It's not a challenge that has disappeared with COVID. In fact, it's become even more important for everyone to have a safe, affordable place to call home. We know this time has been difficult for many families and workers. When the pandemic first hit, many lost their jobs and were struggling to make ends meet. I vowed as Premier that no one would lose their home because they couldn't make rent. It was critical at that time, and it still is, for people to stay home and only go out when necessary to stop the spread of this deadly virus. We asked for our landlords' understandings, but some didn't listen. So our government took immediate action to put a temporary freeze on residential evictions, and we passed legislation to freeze rent until 2021. So the vast majority of tenants wouldn't face a rent increase and people could stay in their homes. But we didn't stop there. We kept going. Minister Clark and his team have been working extremely hard through the pandemic to lay the groundwork for more quality housing to be built. To build it faster and better, getting shovels in the ground quickly with the support of our municipal partners. We need to build more supply to meet the demand, and we need to build more housing near transit. It's that simple. In fact, transit-oriented communities are game changers. Mayor Scarpitti in York Region have been at the forefront of transit-oriented development for many years around the Viva Next Rapid Bus Transit Corridor. So you folks understand what we're trying to do. This year alone, we introduced 2 pieces of legislation to allow the government to enter into new commercial agreements with partners, to build transit-oriented communities around new subway stations, new GO transit rail stations, and other provincial transit projects. That includes building more transit and more housing along the planned Yonge North Subway extension, a project Mayor Scarpitti and all of York Region supports. Building more transit-oriented communities will make it easier for people to get to and from work a lot faster, reach more job opportunities, and reduce congestion on our roads. It's a win-win for everyone. Our government is also partnering with private companies like Van Dyke Group of Companies to connect people to transit and save taxpayers money. Van Dyke is building a brand new GO station at Mimico at no cost to the taxpayers, bringing new jobs and housing around the station to the neighborhood. My friends, we're going to get more shovels in the ground, create more jobs, and build more affordable housing. We're going to put the Canadian dream within the reach of more Ontario families and workers. It's actions like these that are going to help drive the renewal and recovery of our economy. Markham and York Region are great partners, and we know you'll be key contributors to our success. I hope you have a productive conversation at today's virtual summit. As Premier, I'll always continue to fight for our renters and future homeowners. Thank you, and God bless the people of Ontario.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Premier. And again, I just want to say thank you for making time to be a part of our program. I really do appreciate it, particularly in the midst of everything you're doing. And you've just done an amazing job in responding to the pandemic. And I will say, working very closely with municipalities. I've often described you as the most accessible premiers mayors have had, and certainly we've always had a great relationship with the premier of the day, but never surprised to get a phone call from you at any time of the day. And so I thank you for that on the ground communication with the municipal leaders. It's truly important, and it's certainly not just important during the pandemic, really on an ongoing basis, and I thank you for it. Now, the Premier has said that the housing crisis continues to be important priority for them, And I say that there's been a lot of changes so far in cutting through some of the red tape, using tools that the province of Ontario has to try and get housing supply out to the marketplace sooner. And I think the fact that these tools are being used indicates that there is actually more work to be done. And I've had discussions with the Premier about streamlining the planning process even more, so that actually municipalities are able to respond in a timely fashion. Because right now, when we deal with approvals, we're dealing with it in the parameters of the legislation that we're obligated to follow. And so it really makes for a great transition to our next speaker, Steve Clark, who's the Minister for Municipal Affairs and Housing. And I have to say, as a former mayor and a chief administrative officer, there's no doubt that Minister Clark knows firsthand the concerns that we have in addressing the housing affordability issue. He understands that municipalities can't do it alone, that actually the legislative framework makes it challenging, and that we do need the partnerships between the levels of government to bring about real change to programs and to incentives that allow for a diversity of housing options. So please welcome Stephen Clark as he talks to the changes that have been made, and appreciate again all of his efforts in cutting the red tape and speeding up the process that's inherently built into the challenges that are built into the process. And before he speaks, I also want to say a special thank you to him, because I'll tell you, when the provincial government introduced Bill 108, we burned a few telephone lines, to say the least, with the minister expressing concerns with that bill. And I have to say, he listened and he acted, and he understood once again the importance of public space within a community, so that we have complete communities and that we have sports facilities in that public space. He certainly understood how that contributes to the quality of life. And so again, Minister Clark, thank you for everything that you're doing to address the concerns municipalities have, and certainly trying to help to get more affordable housing in the marketplace. Please welcome Minister Clark.
Thanks so much, Frank, for that kind introduction. Let me start by thanking everyone for being here to discuss such an important topic. We all know that Ontario has had a housing crisis for many, many years, and COVID-19 has only underlined the importance of ensuring that everyone can find a home that meets their needs and their budget. And I know you've been working hard to build homes and entire communities where Ontarians can live, work, and play. I witnessed this firsthand when I visited Markham this summer to announce funding for an affordable housing project, and met with some of the partners who are working to create affordable housing in our communities. I recently joined Federal Minister Ahmed Hussen on a panel hosted by the Ontario Nonprofit Housing Association, where we discussed what housing would look like in a post-COVID-19 world. COVID-19 has shed a light on the pressures felt in our community housing system and underscored the urgent need for increased investment. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about Bill 184. And I know with operating agreements coming to an end, many of you are concerned about the future of community housing supply and whether you're going to be able to continue providing these much needed homes. That's why through the Protecting Tenants and Strengthening Community Housing Act, we're helping to protect the homes of over 500,000 Ontarians. It's going to also allow existing nonprofit providers to remain in the community housing system while encouraging new providers to join. Last year, we introduced More Homes, More Choice, our province's housing supply action plan, to help build more homes and give people more choice for homes they can afford. I want to thank the City of Markham for being a key partner and providing important feedback on this critical path to address Ontario's housing crisis. Our plan cuts red tape, making it faster to build housing, to make it easier to build different types of homes, including the much needed missing middle. And it helps manage the cost of building rental and nonprofit housing. We were the first province to sign a joint investment agreement with the federal government to provide funding directly to people to help afford their housing costs. The Canada, Ontario Housing Benefit makes $1.4 billion available in a portable benefit directly to those who need it most. This year, we expect 5,200 Ontarians to receive payments, and that number will grow every single year. In 2021, we are providing almost $1 billion to help sustain, repair, and grow our community housing system and to help end homelessness in Ontario. Through the Canada-Ontario Community Housing Initiative, we're investing more than $226 million over 3 years to repair existing housing and provide operational support. As a direct result of COVID-19, our government created the $510 million Social Services Relief Fund. We know that our municipal and Indigenous partners are facing extraordinary challenges. That's why under phase 1 of the SSRF program, our government invested nearly $5 million in the regional municipality of York and invested an additional $8.4 million through phase 2 funding to help support immediate needs related to COVID-19. These investments will help support homeless shelter staff and residents, expand rent banks, and create longer-term innovative solutions to help protect our most vulnerable. Our government also knows that too many people have been hit with financial hardship during the pandemic, and that's why we took immediate action and became the first province in Canada to freeze rents for residential tenants in 2021. This will help provide much financial stability and predictability for Ontario's 1.7 million renters. In conclusion, I know that Markham has its own distinct housing issues and challenges, but I believe the best results come when we're collaborating and working together. Today, we have a real opportunity to exchange ideas and work toward building solutions that will help create affordable housing and stronger communities in Markham. Our government is here to help. We're here to support you. I hope you have a productive summit. Thanks for having me here.
Well, thank you very much, Minister Clark. Really appreciate everything that you've done, and thank you for taking our phone calls and for the opportunity to have an honest discussion with you. And I have to say, repeat that once again, you listened and you acted, and we thank you for it. So with that now, I want to again thank everyone who's joined us here today. We've got an exciting program, and someone who's going to steer the ship from here on in is our Master of Ceremonies today, who is Arvin Prasad, Commissioner of Development Services. Now, Arvin joined the City of Markham back in 2018, and I'm sure he probably has to check that date because there's been so much happening since he arrived here. But fair to say that Arvin Prasad truly has been instrumental in transforming the way in which we work with our stakeholders in our community. And he's truly been outstanding in terms of reaching out and making sure that he understands the clients that we serve. He's also been a leader when it comes to developing Markham's affordable housing strategy. And I have to say, we wouldn't be here today without his guidance and leadership, and certainly look forward to the ongoing work that we'll have, as I said, after this summit is over. So with that, and for those of you that are old enough will appreciate the reference, here's Arvin.
Thank you, Mayor Scarpitti. Good morning and welcome to the Markham Housing Summit. My name is Arvin Prasad. I'm the Commissioner of Development Services for the City of Markham. Safe, affordable, appropriate, and accessible housing is absolutely essential for complete communities. Today, more than ever, there is a need for housing options for people with low incomes, including seniors, families, children, young adults, and those with accessibility needs. As we have heard this morning, average market rents and average house prices are not affordable to most households across the city and across the GTA. Affordable housing is aimed at households in the bottom 60% of the income distribution in the City of Markham. Many of these people are experiencing affordability challenges because they are spending more than 30% of their income on housing and leaving less and less money for essential needs and savings. Based on average incomes in the city of Markham, an affordable home to our residents is one that is priced at a maximum of $471,000. In terms of rental accommodations, affordable rents are no more than $1,337 per month on average. The City of Markham is undertaking multiple initiatives to explore innovative solutions to address housing affordability, including the important conversations that we are going to have right here today. Before I introduce our keynote speaker, I'd like to remind everyone that this summit is being live streamed via the city's website and recorded. As a courtesy to other participants, please mute your microphone and turn off your video during the presentations. There will, of course, be some times after the keynote presentation and panel discussion for questions and answers. If you'd like to comment or ask a question, please use the raise hand tool, which you can find by clicking on the participants icon in the Zoom menu at the bottom of your screen. Once the participant slide screen opens at the bottom, it will either click the blue hand symbol, if shown, or the 3 small dot button and choose raise hand. So that's how you participate. With that in mind, it is my pleasure to welcome and introduce Mr. Avi Friedman as our keynote speaker this morning. Avi is a professor of architecture at McGill University and the principal of Avi Friedman Consultants Incorporated. He is renowned for his academic and private sector work and accomplishments on affordable housing. In 1988, he co-founded the Affordable Homes Program at the McGill School of Architecture, where he currently teaches. He is also recognized for his innovations in the housing sector, and in particular for the Grow Home and Next Home housing designs. He's the author of 23 books and a columnist for several media outlets and a recipient of numerous awards, including the Manning Innovation Award, the Lifetime Achievement Award from Sustainable Buildings Canada, and the World Habitat Award. In the year 2000, he was selected by Wallpaper magazine as one of the 10 people from around the world most likely to change the way we live. Welcome, Avi.
Thank you.
Have to share your screen.
Oh.
Have to share your screen.
Oh. I hope that you can all see me well. Thank you so much for the invitation. Sincerely appreciate your warm welcome, Mr. Mayor, Council, and the wonderful staff who facilitated this talk. You know, usually I do these talks from a close distance, but now I believe that the pandemic changed everything. So, now what I would like to do is, I believe that, you know, when you talk about affordable housing, seems to me that it is an issue that never went away and will not. And it is one of the things that every municipality across the country faces, which again talk to the fact that housing become a very valuable commodity. If you were to think about the rationale, the reason why we have such problem, there are many, many reasons. I will attempt to address some of them today, but in general, there are many reasons and they are changing from community to community. If you were to take solutions for affordable housing, you may be able to group them in 2 different groups. The first one is everything that has to do with policy making. This is subsidies, introduce price cap, and so on. The other group is the product-related solution that, for example, involve innovation or relaxing zoning. Today, I will concentrate and talk primarily about the product. I am an architect, as you know, and in the product, what I will attempt to do is speak primarily about thinking outside the box or innovation, if possible. If you were to see or look at the cost of the house, you can group the component into two groups. The first one is elements that the initiator has little control of. And this is financing. This is determined by the Bank of Canada and so on. These are elements that we cannot control really. The other components are those that can be manipulated to create affordable housing. We can manipulate the land, as you will see later, to make it more dense, development cost, as well as material and labor. They are under the initiator, be it the municipality or the builder's control. Today, I will concentrate on the factor that under the initiator control and spend less time on policy issues and so on. In each subject that I'm going to name, I'm going to discuss the challenge, the concept that leads to a solution. I will show you example from Canada and around the world, and then summary of a takeaway sentence. Let's begin by density. This is probably a picture that you are familiar with across Canada. And this is our houses that have been built to a density, I will say, of 4 to 7 units per acre with wide road, sidewalks, and so on. These are the kinds of density that does not produce affordable housing. So this is a basic component that we need to tackle. Now, what happened is that if you see this diagram as a principle, that you see that if you move from 2 to 8 dwelling per acre, you can see how much land is left over, how little the infrastructure is, which means that what we need to do to begin with is rethink, reset our minds about densities. I would like to take you to a project that I designed in Ontario, in Middlesex Centre. In many of the places that I come to, people who live in a suburban context suggest that they would like to have green space and to have affordable housing. And this is, of course, a contradiction. And this was the challenge here. You can see in the middle of the screen the site that was wedged between the communities of Comoca and Kilward near London, Ontario. And this is the solution that we came up with. As you can see here, you can see that there is lots of green space. But this is affordable because the houses that we selected make the difference. And there are apartment building in the front, duplexes and triplexes, and yet you have these green open spaces. So affordable housing and density does not apply that everything needs to be crammed together. This is the amenity space. This is the urban agriculture, green spaces, play area, and so on that was left between the houses. But remember, in this design, there is no indoor parking. This is the compromise. They all park outdoors. And they're all duplexes and triplexes, meaning that on one structure, you have 3 families. Now, another issue is commercial area. Think about this, again, image that I have no doubt that you are familiar with. This is a commercial area with big boxes. You can appreciate that the only time this parking lot will be full will be on the Friday before Christmas. But we still insist of having too many cars. Can we have an alternative? Now imagine that on each of these structures we will have housing. Is it possible? It is. This is Vancouver, British Columbia. And as you can see in the rise in Vancouver, you can see that on top of Home Depot and Winners, they build houses. And if I climb over the place, this is how the place looks like. It looks like a regular neighborhood. which means that innovatively, if we take a commercial area and we build 2 or 3 or 4 floors above, it will be fantastic. This is, by the way, a situation that happened now in my city, in Montreal. Many of the shopping centers that were built in the 60s are now being replaced, demolished, and replaced by mixed project with housing and commerce. In other words, densification lowered the cost of land and utility, but taking advantage of existing infrastructure. But once again, denser means less money. Think about these streets. I will bet you that if you take a pillow and a mattress and lie down in the middle of this street, nothing will happen to you between 9 and 5. Yet, we insist that right of way will be something like 60 feet, which is outrageous. Now, I believe that there is a tendency now and direction to change that, because the street and parking in every community and municipality account for 40% of all the development area. And on top of that, if you just reduce the parking spaces from 2 to 1 or less than 1, you can see that more space and land will be available for development. I would like to take you to a community that, in my opinion, represents a change in how we design neighborhoods in the future, and this is the Grow community in Washington, US. If you will see, the people here don't park inside the community. They park on the periphery and they walk. It's all to have snow and so on, but once again, you also see in this development, where is the lot line? Where is the subdivision? How does it work? And you can see the density in these places, solar houses as usual. We, unfortunately, if we don't let people park in the living room on front of their television, something is wrong with the house, but this is what they did there. And this is a close-up of that community, and you will see so much space was left for urban agriculture, tree, and congregation spaces. I would like to take you also to one of my favorite places, and this is Västerhamnen in Malmö in Sweden, a huge development of about 30,000 people with 1,100 apartments. And again, something is wrong with this picture. Something is missing. What is missing? Streets. This is shared street. In Dutch, they call it Woonhof. And these are shared streets. In other words, every space here is shared between people and cars. And this is how the street look like. Something that you also see, and we will talk about it later, is that those spaces do not have very minimal setback. They have small setback, but it is walkable. The pavement is permeable and wonderful to accommodate people. So, car-free community, which is communities, which is the future, I believe, on how we will design places, will lower the cost of roads, sidewalks, and utility. Dwelling types. I believe that in most cases in our zoning, we commonly suggest and we develop everything in community that have identical type of housing. It's like having a jeans store with only one size. I believe that this is not the makeup of society today. Today, we are missing the middle housing type. If you will check the demographic background of Canadian today and the pie chart, you will see that there are many people, single people or young couple who do not have kids, or elderly who cannot have access to housing. And they cannot be supplied and accommodated by single family detached home. They may not want also apartment building. They want these middle housing types. And I believe that this is something that is wonderful, and you can see how communities around the world are responding to this need. Once again, let me take you to Finland. And in Porvoo, a small town in Finland, I saw this. In the same development next to each other, you have single families, you have semi-detaches, and you have row houses. And you will see in that community, in another part, there is apartment building. And the white lines are lines from which they walk to their home. And I always ask myself how the fire truck enters to these places when I walk there. Well, it's called innovation. I believe that the Finns never rescue their people's life. So there are solutions that come from discussion and innovation, and I believe that this is very important. So they park and they walk to their place, and these are the houses. This is the homes that have been built. And by the way, by law, they need to provide a play space for kids next to each home. But these are the typology of homes that you see in these places. So what dwelling type do? I believe that they draw more people to the same place and reduce the cost. Another one is infill housing. Infill housing, what we commonly see today is we have many homes that have been built in the 60s and the 70s, and they can be replaced. And the idea in replacing them is to have a variety of housing type and prototype that provide the possibility of introducing denser infill by demolishing existing one. So this is a project that I did in Bridgewater Court in Hamilton. And as you can see, there are townhouses, and the site was next to townhouses and to single family homes. And what we did there, we introduced the same design, but we increased the number of duplexes and triplexes. In other words, it was denser infill into existing community. This is the place. This is how the place looks like. And you can see green spaces. And once again, to reduce costs, all parking are outdoors. And this is how the place will be once built. Another project I did in Brantford, Ontario. There we encountered a little bit of resistance from the community because they had single family homes. What we have done is create 3 different alternatives for them. And as you can see, there is a big green space at the back, and where people from the single family and the townhouses that we suggested will be able to play together. And again, NIMBY sometimes can be a challenge in some of the places, and this is how the community looks like. Another approach, which I like very much, is everything that has to do with siting, with prefabrication. I will talk about it later. This is a company in Holland that goes into existing building and put on them prefabricated home. You can go to places that are maybe run down, maybe denser in the heart of the city, and place on them housing. And this is again another way to reduce cost. So denser infill, lower housing costs by replacing low with high density housing and taking advantage of existing infrastructure. You don't have to build roads and sewer. Siting. We insist in many communities of building 20 feet distance from setback, and also lot coverage require big areas at the back, big yards. This is something that again can be mitigated and changed. Now, there are many things that has to do with the form of the house that affect cost, like the width and so on. I will talk about them later. But once again, setback is the one that I want to refer to now. This is affordable housing, I believe social housing in Vienna. As you can see, there are many marks that make for a very interesting project, including green roof. No parking, no cars. Where do they park? Under the project, there is, you can see on the bottom left, there is a common parking area, but this is their front setback, 4 feet. And they seems to be happy. They got the house and they like what they got. What I like about this project as well is the fact that in the townhouses, you have a variety of size, recognizing that there are different types of families, so narrow, wider, and so on, which is beautiful. Minimizing setbacks will result in shorter, less costly lots, higher density, and possible rear lane for parking if you wish. This is a building in Montreal, and again, we insist that all the lots will be 50 by 100. First, on this project, I don't understand why the people here insisted that there will be 2 front entrances to the building and that the garage will have a dormer. I suspect that they would like to have the car happy. So in our studies, what we have done over time, we measure and we compare regular, typical home to narrow front. And you can see on the bottom right and left how it affects cost. Housing then become much cheaper if you go to a smaller, narrower lot because infrastructure per house is also reduced. I would like to take you to an interesting project in Montreal called Cité Jardin Fontenot. And this was the outcome of a competition. The city made lots, land that it owned available. This is how they have done it. And then the city asked for submissions from builders. The builders it was a design build submission, and there was innovation, and the builder agreed to put a price cap. Of course, the customer have to lower their expectation, but they will get affordable housing. So this is a model for city initiating competition on land that it's on land that it has. Now, the city here was very active. What they have done, all the roads at the back are private roads. So the people clean them, and the city like it very much. No indoor parking, very small backyard for each home, and shared space in between. So what was done here? This is the home, 14 feet wide. What they have done, the city agreed to change the height from 35 to 40 feet. This allowed people to have habitable attic on top. This is the shared space in between. As you can see here, you have very little on the bottom right. You have very little personal space, and you have wonderful shared space that was developed. It works beautifully in the summer. You know, architects like to take picture without people. I apologize for that, but this is how things are commonly done. So now attached dwellings reduce the cost and reduce infrastructure per unit. Buyer choice. What we commonly do is that developer prepare ready-made home. Everything is included. In some cases, as you can see here, in some cases you have granite countertop and so on. People not always need this stuff. And once we involve the buyer and they give them a choice, we are benefiting. And this in fact works well because our society changed. If again, I mentioned it before, but if you see the demographic pie chart, and I believe that this is the case in Markham, you will see a variety of family types. Not everybody needs the same, and people not need to tie themselves for a mortgage for the rest of their life. Some can live differently and buy only what they need and can afford. We introduced this concept in the design of the next home that we build on the campus of McGill University. This picture is one of the projects that was built in real life, if you want. But this is the building that we bought. It was a triplex. Again, narrow, 20 feet wide, and each floor was 800 square feet. And what we suggested is that the arrangement of the units inside of the level can be done according to people's needs and affordability, meaning that people will be able to divide the interior to triplex, to 3 different families, or duplex, 2 families. And the builder, we created a flexibility for the builder that will enable them to do so. How did you buy your interior component? Much like the car industry sells interiors. You can buy leather seat, you can buy fabric seat. and all the things you can buy from a catalog of items, which is this one. Meaning that in the arrangement of the design, there may be administrative costs, but every builder told me that if this is done in advance, no problem there whatsoever. And this is again the case here. Thousands of units have been built in Montreal and they all work on the same project. And the principle, once again, is such that variety of family types have the possibility to find what they need and can afford and not being set or kept out of the market. This is the interior. The interior in this space have a single old person on the ground floor who work from home, young couple on the second floor, and a single mother with 2 teenage kids who occupy the other 2 floors above, and she lives also, she has the space under the attic. Now, what happened is that offering choices lets buyer purchase only what they need and can afford. Do it yourself. I believe that for very long, we believe that the buyers, to some measure, metaphorically are handicapped. They cannot do. They cannot build for themselves. They cannot contribute. And I believe that similar to the other project where you offer a choice, another choice that you can offer is not to have the builder complete all the work. And I believe when I go on the weekend to the Home Depot, what I commonly see is many people, that the people who buy at Home Depot are not builders. They're regular citizens who took upon themselves, some of them, not of course everyone can do, but some can, to complete and work on their own homes, be it gardening or replacing a toilet or a faucet. Now, the question is how I always wonder how the French are doing it. This is a project called Logement Mollhouse. This is near Paris, and it was designed by one of the nicest firms, Lacaton Vassal. But what's interesting about it, and I believe this perhaps can be another lesson for Markham. They had a piece of land and they say, let's invite the best architect of the world and have them come, each one will get a row. Now, you believe that this will be very expensive enterprise to the city. No, but many architects would like to leave a mark on history, and the fees that they are charging are not superior and big. But let's see what they did here. So, how Lacaton Vassal did it, they built this structure that you see on the left column. And as you can see, everything was left open. This is what clients get. They get area, and you can see in some places pipes sticking from the floor. Now, you can call a builder, you can ask the builder to finish it, you can hire a contractor, or you can do it yourself. And as you can see, the houses are also, the different houses are of different size, which again, in the same building, bring different families. Let's see what we did here. If you see the middle row, horizontal row, you will see 3 different types of kitchen. I guess that the person on the left, the middle left, went and bought components. They went to a store like either IKEA or Renault Depot, and they bought cabinets and they connected them. Everybody can connect. It's very simple. Should be done by a plumber. But I believe that the connection will not be that expensive. You can see a more traditional kitchen in the middle, and you can see a couple who build their own kitchen. Once again, we need to understand, if we use common practices in building affordable housing, nothing will happen. The thing is that we need to do thinking outside the box, meaning that we need to think about alternative ways that are not risking safety of people, but also engage them in different way. So this is again something that is important. Now, what happened, what happened is that I believe that self-help reduces cost by letting people use their own labor. Apartments. The sure bet on having affordable housing is to build denser housing types, and this is apartment. But we rarely see innovation. If you see apartment buildings in many cities, you probably will recognize that many of the apartment buildings are designed for very narrow segment of the population. This is single, young couple with no kids, or the elderly who sell large home and move to a place. Affordable housing can be in apartment, but it needs to be innovative. And there are so many examples from around the world, but I would like to take you to your own backyard, to Toronto. And the idea in the project, in such project, is that you create variety of opportunities and alternatives to create affordable housing that are also innovative. So this is what I did in 60 Richmond Cooperative. It was designed, affordable housing, for the people, if I'm not mistaken, who work in the restaurant, in the hospitality, in the restaurant industry in Toronto. But what's interesting about it is that it's not only beautiful building, but it's also environmental. And as you can see, there is an atrium in the middle, and there are all kind of wonderful arrangement. And if you go to the plans, you will see very interesting. The same place, the same apartment building, has variety of housing size to accommodate people. As you can see, variety of housing size. But on the 6th floor, they have a garden, a backyard. Imagine in time like today, in the COVID time, where kids can go and play with their friends, with masks, of course, but they can go and play right there on the 6th floors and so on. So what we need to do is to begin to think about affordable housing for families that are simple, well-built, and also create many alternative sustainable elements like water, rain, gardens, and all the elements that make place sustainable. I believe that innovative apartments reduce cost by increasing land efficiency and mixing households. And this is, again, sure bet to create affordable housing, innovative apartment. Now, if you take energy, for example, when you come to think about energy consumption or consumption, you most likely will say what this has to do with affordability. Now, I believe that if you see, I assume that Ontario, that we are living in a cold nation. Some people in the affordability range spend 10% of their housing allowance on energy costs, on heating the place. In other words, thinking and creating alternative energy uses will also lower the cost. And as you can see, we are not letting out. I believe that our homes will be in the future connected to more things. We will have to spend more, and you can see the projection of energy consumption and as a result, cost in the coming year. Let me take you again to, I believe, the wonderful state of Washington. You see many things, and this is the Z home. What they created is net zero energy neighborhood. Imagine that we will invest, perhaps with government support, money at first, and then in the rest of your tenure in this place, you will not have to pay for energy. I believe that this, once again, is wonderful. But in order to achieve that, we need to create a house that take advantage of passive solar gain. I believe, this is again in a parenthesis, that the pandemic and us needing to stay at home, similar to what the Premier said before, I believe that having more light to the place is not only good for energy consumption, but also to our mental well-being, which is extremely important. And as you can see, the architect checked the wind direction, the solar part and so on. And this is how the place looks. So it's not only dense, lots of units, but there is also solar panels on top. Now, I know that there may people say, oh, there might be initial cost. There are many projects, I believe that Ontario stopped it, but the idea of asking people if they live in high density situation to contribute, even if it is affordable, a little bit more in order to eliminate in the future the cost of energy will go a long way into making affordable housing. Now, people believe that affordability ends when you got your home. That's a mistake. Affordability only begins when you enter the home, because then you have to pay for 2 cars if you live far away, and you have housing expenses that you didn't have when you rented. And this is, again, something that needs to affect the way we think about housing, not at the beginning, but throughout the way. I believe that passive and active energy strategies will lower utility bills. Technology. I believe that if you were to visit many projects around the world, you most likely in Canada, you probably will see this image. Ladies and gentlemen, we still build homes the way we built them in the 1940s. Whereas in today, you can go to a hospital and you can have a cut in your left arm, and a camera will be inserted into your heart to take images and so on. We are still building homes in an archaic way. Time to move forward. Once again, who moved forward? The car industry. On the left, this is how they used to build cars in the 1930s. This summer with my son, I went to Stuttgart to see the car factory, and it was amazed that nothing, you don't see a single person on the assembly line. It's all automated and robotic, but we're still doing things the wrong way. But I took it upon myself as a challenge, and we designed Domus Ex Machina. Maybe the first home will be in Markham. I really hope that this will happen. Now, how it works? Modular prefabrication. Homes built in the factories, despite the rumors, are better than homes built on the side. So it is a modular prefabrication. You can arrange the volume the way you want. You can arrange it to be a duplex, triplex, or single family home. There are only 7 partitions that are used inside and about 6 outside to create variety of housing type. The interior, all made with dry construction. No plastering, sanding, endless work that costs a tremendous amount of money. We need to lower labor costs if we want to achieve affordability. Partition, who say that all the partition need to be in place? They can be demountable. A single person does not need a regular apartment. You go and you install and you remove it when somebody else moves in. Stairs, we spend 2 days on building regular stair in a home. This will be built in a factory, brought to place and welded and connected to that place. Today, we run conduits all over the place. You need to have X-ray eyes to know where your wires are. We suggested that we will have a conduit, a corridor, everything will be there. And we suggested that all the plumbing wall will be in the same location on all the floors, so connection will be much easier. We suggested that you need not to have wires in the wall. You can have a chaser. You can remove that cup and the wires go right in that place, and you can change the wires and so on. In other words, all the tasks that are so expensive today, electrician may charge tens of dollars for every hour. I believe that this can be reduced, time to move forward. And using your telephone, you will be able to order the type of storage spaces that you need for the living room, for the bedroom, and it will be delivered for you installed in the module. So there will not be cost the cost of building all these closets and so on, which will bring costs down. I believe the time has come to look and explore new technologies that lower labor cost area. Now, I would like this is the final segment, and I would like to take you to a case study of how we change the temperament, how we introduce different thinking to a place, how we were able to change things and bring about change and affordable housing to a community. First, I believe that in every house that we build today, conventional home, there is a little one that wishes to jump out. We have a little house that wants to jump out. I believe that this is not needed. In 1990, on the campus of McGill University, my colleague and I built a home called the Grow Home, 14 feet wide. I did not have tenure at the time. I was sure that they will kick me out of the university. But this is what we did, 4.2 meter wide, 2 stories because we could not build a basement, of course. And we suggested simplicity, that people will be able to go to IKEA and in the future buy doors to their kitchen. Why they should have it all now? The corridor, the hallway need not to be a space in which you can square dance, but you can use it for storage. We suggested that the second floor at the beginning will be unpartitioned. And in the future, you will be able to divide it and have a bathroom and 2 bedrooms. Now, you say, why shouldn't they do it at first? You see, if you knock off $15,000 or $20,000 from the cost of a house, you right away let in a big segment of the population. So every cost reduction is important. We were stunned when we saw our name in the front page of the Los Angeles Times, Philadelphia Inquirer, and the New York Times. And to my luck, this gentleman walked into my office and told me about the homes that he built today. I saw 28 by 34. He say, it was a huge recession. He say, I'm about to lose everything. And what I told him is like this: if you will divide it to 4 pieces, place 3 on top of each other, you will get to go home. He offered it for $75,900. $149,900 was the cost of a conventional home. The guy on the bottom there did not have a good weekend. It started a building boom. Mr. McCall, the first builder, sold 24 units at first, and then entire development of 89 units in 2 weeks. These are the Grow homes that were built in Montreal. We stopped counting at 10,000, and they are now featured all over the place. I believe that small, narrow, built-in row, unfinished, will result in multiple cost reduction. But you can see that once the product is provided to the people who need it, there will not be problem in the future. Richard, in conclusion, you know who wins in chess? The person winning chess is the one that sees the most moves ahead. I can tell you that there will be housing problem in the future. I can tell you that affordability in the city of Markham, even if you build, will not subside in the future. What we commonly see and we need is a strategy that will produce affordable housing, not only in the current administration, but in future administration. We need a machine. We need to put in place the infrastructure to the production of affordable housing. So what is the way forward? I traveled around, as you see, and again, I draw some conclusion from my meetings of what constitute good environment to the production of affordable housing. And the first thing is that teamwork. I think that it came across, many of the things that I mentioned were across in the strategies that you will hear about later. But the idea is that there is no us and them. Builders work together with the municipality to create a wonderful teamwork. And if you can bring in, and this is how it was done in Malmö, in Sweden. They are not, it's not confrontational. The builder understands that the well-being of the community is important. Incentive, although I put here a picture of money, incentive is not only money. In other words, I know that the federal government provide now money is available to communities, but there are all kinds of other incentives. Some communities have a fast track approval, less than a week, 2 weeks. If you do affordable housing, we are fast tracking for it for you. Then you have innovative bylaws and policies. In other words, many of the things that you show, including the picture that I showed there in Malmö, it's innovative. I did not see it in other places. Where is the lot line? Where is the subdivision? Why zero setback in the entire community? Why shared street? These are all innovative thinking that make housing work in some countries in an amazing fashion. And then there is leadership. Now, I truly believe that leadership is not only on the part, and I really appreciate what Markham did. Mayor, congratulations to you and your team of driving the process. This is for me pure example of good leadership. And I believe that what needs to happen, it's leadership also on the part of the builders. In other words, to understand that if you don't have first-time home buyers, you will never have second-time buyers. It is in your best interest to see more people getting into the housing market and become homeowners and renters, because it is a step for the future. But I know that many of these things that I mentioned are a challenge. I know that. It's not easy to do. You wake up in the morning and say, how will I change it? But I believe that everything begins in good steps, and what we are seeing today in these wonderful meetings of yours is a first step into future of affordable housing in Markham. Thank you so much. Now, I would be now happy to answer any question. As you will recall from our MC, we are using Zoom raise hand function. Please use this function. One of the facilitators will call your name and enable you to proceed with your question.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I am Daryl Lyons, the Manager of Policy at the City of Markham. I'm going to help and assist Avi with facilitating this question and answer period. So for those that have questions, the instructions were sent out to you earlier in the email and the participant tips. But just as a quick reminder, in the bottom of the screen, you will have the participants button. You can click on the participants button. It'll bring up a sidebar showing participants. In the bottom right-hand corner of that, you will either have a blue hand that you can raise, or you will have 3 dots, and that is a button. And when you click on that, that will allow you to raise your hand or lower your hand. So as I see, we have a question from Surjit. If we can enable his audio and video, please. So you can turn on your audio and video. And Avi, if you can take down your presentation, please, would be fantastic.
Yeah, it's still on, or supposed not to be on?
Yes, if you can just, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Speak louder, please, if you may.
Hello, Dr. Friedman. I have a question. You live in Montreal. Have you looked into any possibilities of a rooftop farm like the loofah farms of Montreal? Have you considered any of that?
You know, what I attempted to keep aside is all my sustainability project. So I have many examples, I'm familiar with urban agriculture, but I believe that, again, I did not include that. But your question is fantastic, because I believe that people can save on food, like the name of the store. In other words, people can grow their own food. And as I mentioned early on, we are looking now into living and eating nutritious food, being active. And in my opinion, this is also important for affordable housing. In Finland, I mentioned it in parentheses, the municipality required that every cluster of home will have mandatory play spaces. When people are active and in good shape, they are productive, they work, the home that they get is a ladder, and they work hard and so on. And I believe that also that the pandemic made us need to be in good shape. But wonderful question. Everything is possible. Yes.
And I just wanted to say that the residents we are planning to build will have seniors, and this is one way to keep them occupied in doing something very useful, not only for themselves, but for the community around.
That's fantastic. I believe that seems to me that I heard the mayor mention it in our conversation about complete communities. Yeah. Today, if we are talking about lessons that the pandemic taught us, if we can keep elderly in the community, meaning in their own homes and not in centers, it will be wonderful. And when they are kept, they need to be active. In addition, I will say that if people can afford, although it may be expensive, I'm aware of that you can build a structure on top of their home in an apartment building where they will be able to grow food in the winter. Wonderful. Lufa Farm, one of my favorite places in Montreal, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, now we have a question from Fred Weingast. If you can turn on your audio and video, please. Oh, and if you can enable your audio, there'll be a button in the bottom left-hand corner to unmute.
Okay, now I've got the ability to unmute. Thank you. Question to Avi. As we were looking at the different models, I was struck by the number of stairs that you would have to go. And if you're talking about aging in place, in any of the models that you've seen around the world, have you seen how people in wheelchairs who have difficulties in moving around become part of these complete communities? It struck me as, if you have a multi-story thing, unless there's an elevator built in, it's very difficult for someone who is wheelchair bound to be able to navigate up and down and remain in their home. So I was wondering what your thoughts were on that.
Excellent question. And I believe that housing senior and disabled persons should be one of our top priorities. But I will suggest the following. In townhouses, you cannot avoid having steps. So there are two solutions. One that I recommend, I don't know if you know, I won a competition on designing townhouses for flex housing. It was a competition a few years ago. But the basic idea is that people who have mobility issues can live on the ground floor with no stairs from whatsoever. In other words, they will be able to wheel themselves right into their units directly from the street. So this is the solution. In other words, in a duplex situation, they will live on the duplex or triplex, they will reside on the ground floor. In other situation, I believe that the cost of lifts in the house became inexpensive nowadays. It's not that expensive to place housing, to place these lifts that are now coming. In many cases, like in Quebec, these are subsidized items that there can be deducted. So once again, the solution is living on the ground floor with no stairs whatsoever, or having lifts on all kinds of other things that can let them go up easily, or in the example that I provided, is having them live in an apartment building. In other words, this will be, in my opinion, the reasonable option in this case.
Avi, thank you. I think we would love to have the opportunity to show you this type of apartment building that is designed for people whose needs are different, and as well whose needs for support continue to grow as they age. So offline, I'd love to be able to, and we have a team that would be more than happy to show you not a theoretical, but an actual built structure with integrated supports that is needed.
Wonderful, Fred. I will be delighted. I always love to learn new stuff. So wonderful. You have my coordinates. Just reach out to me, send me stuff. And if I can assist, I will be delighted to do so.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the team who put the seminar on today. Let's hear some more good questions.
Okay, thank you. And we have another question from Clovis Grant. And if you can turn on your audio and video.
Wonderful. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, beautiful. I was just going to say, thank you so much, Dr. Friedman, for a truly inspirational lecture discussion. And I applaud so many of the solutions that you've come up with. And one question that just reverberates with me is some of the options, do they not penalize people who are who won't have the income to support? For instance, if I'm going to be moving into a new facility and I don't have the resources to actually go and buy those dividers, let's say, then that's an additional cost to me. So I would have to then go with an option that is more pre-done, which then is more costly. So either way, it seems like the individual who is going to be penalized if they have lower income, because if you've got an open space and then they have to go and actually then purchase these prefabricated dividers, does it not put the cost onto them as opposed to the designers?
Well, you see, what happened is that you ask a very interesting question, and this is, shall we have a front-end investment, buy the things divided already, and not have them at all? My suggestion is that anything that you can deduct from the front of the cost will let you into the house. You need a very comfortable envelope. You need walls in the kitchen, in the bathroom, and maybe the bedroom. But there are many places in which you don't like the lifestyle. If people are single, if there is one person in the family or a couple, they may not need all the partition. Eliminating them, the front end of the cost will lower the cost. Now, I believe that in the future, what I envision with the demountable partition is that, imagine that you go today to the Home Depot and you can buy a box of stud and an instruction. Similar to what you do, it will be as simple as installing Billy. I don't know if you have been to IKEA. You know, I have many Billy. You can see some of them here behind me. And this is cupboards. And it will be very simple to put together a wall that will serve you if you want to create some sort of separation. The basic idea, as I pointed out, any dollars that you can eliminate from bring the cost will open affordability. The pyramid will lower from the top. We will lower and then we will move toward the base. So yes, in the future, you may have expenses to buy this partition, but at first you don't need them. And you will be able to build it by yourself.
Fair enough.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay, and we also have another question from Councillor Usman. Councillor, if you can turn on your audio and video. And
all right. Well, good morning, Avi. I think I love the presentation. I thank our mayor because he's done a great job in bringing you and other participants to this summit. And I'm really, really impressed with what you have shown. But my question is a very basic question. And the basic, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you well.
Okay. My basic question is, how do you control all these savings that you talk about and the cost that the builder will save based on this your concept? How do you make sure that they are passed on? Because I've seen in the past history where the special housing is made and the builders, not that I'm trying to single them out, but they're never passed on to the eventual consumers. I just saw on the weekend, and I'm just going to then close my question. There's a building downtown and they were giving extras, lighting fixtures. You know, the thing that would cost $100, they're charging $750 for God's sake. So how do we make sure, or is there a mechanism whereby all these savings that you talk about are truly passed on to the eventual buyer?
You know, it is a fantastic question. I appreciate, Councillor, your question. Excellent question. Look, this is my straight answer. We are living in democracy, in a free market. You cannot, the idea is that regardless how you see your life, we cannot force builders to do things that what we only can do is to apply to their good heart and to their charitable view that they will not take too much money from the client. However, and this is where you come to play a role. And this is, I believe that there is something called, there are many incentives that can be done by giving to developers, and in return, you can put a cap on the price. Say, density bonuses. If you allow a builder to build, say, triplexes on a not single family, they will make tons of money. Then you can demand legally, and this is in the permit, that they will have in return, they will need to put a cap on their price. They will not go beyond certain amount. All the projects that are controlled by the city can be regulated. You have legal mechanism because you're giving something from the public to the developer. However, I believe that there is another issue, and here I'm speaking, putting my charitable hat on my head. And I say, man, if you are a builder, then you need to have a good conscience. You need to know that if you don't have first-time buyers, forget about it. You will not have a second-time buyer. In other words, what we need to do, we need to also go to a process of education. And what I did today is a first step in this process.
Well, thank you, Avi, but just as a follow-up, you know, we in Markham, we have given bonuses to some of the builders, whereby we have given them height, more height, so that they can, you know, subsidize. But the market rate is, my dear friend, you'll be shocked, is even more than what when they started the project. So I don't know, but I'm glad that you told me there that we can regulate legally.
Absolutely. I believe that I will be, you know, I did studies on policies. I'm an architect, but I did study on policies. And there are so many, I believe that what the city needs to put is to put it on itself the wits You know what I mean? It's need to be a process of negotiation. You have to have
Well,
a
I'm
tough
gonna
negotiation.
keep an eye on it now.
Unfortunately, we're running tight on time. We do have one more question that we would like to turn to. So if Councillor Ray, if you can turn on your, unmute yourself. I see your video is on, and thank you.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. That was really interesting. I've been advocating for duplexes and triplexes since 2014 and have got nowhere. So I appreciate that the city can change policies and densify in certain areas. We need the builders. We do not own land that we can use for housing. We're not developers. I think bottom line is the developers are in there to make money, and I'm not faulting them for that. But how do you give a developer an incentive to build something that's more affordable or more rental units? If they're building 1,000 houses, we would need like 100 of those units to be like for purpose-built rental. And I'm not sure how you get the developers on board. I appreciate that they're all listening today. So I'm hoping that they will come up with some ideas as well. So I think you got some interesting ideas. The developers have to buy into it, and that's the issue.
Absolutely. I echo what you said. I know that we don't have much time, but I truly believe that, there are so many things that we can do in a democratic society. You cannot force people to do certain things. Otherwise, they will go to work in another community. We all know that. They will say Markham is difficult. But I believe that there is an issue of cultivation. I believe that we need to take a few developers and not ask them for charity work, but explain to them that moving into townhouses or apartments or duplexes and triplexes will end up in them making more money. People believe that you make money in single family homes. They don't understand that you make more money building duplexes and triplexes because the volume, the cost per unit is much smaller. But you make money on the volume, more units are being produced. So, and I believe that maybe, and I'm venturing, forgive me if I'm venturing into bad territory, but I believe that the city can go and purchase pieces of land. In Montreal, they just passed. I will be very brief, Dara. The city of Montreal passed a bylaw that says that the city, if someone makes an offer on a building, the city has 20 days to step in and buy the same building. So what the city of Montreal is doing today is buying land and buying units, and they use the money that they got from the federal government to do that. And these are the strategy. In other words, what I believe, Councillor, is that we cannot fall back on old methods and do same old, same old. We must be innovative in the technology and the architecture side, but also on the policy and the negotiation side.
Well, thank you, Avi, for opening this summit. Oh, wow, such an inspiring speech and presentation, and you've reflected upon the importance of teamwork, the importance of incentives, being innovative and strong leadership to realize the opportunities to increase the supply of affordable housing. I have been receiving text messages and emails saying what a wonderful job you've done. So thank you. Discussion that followed, the questions were highlighted how important this issue is. So thank you again. And I know you'll be staying with us for some of the exciting events to come. The next segment is this morning is a panel discussion on building affordable and rental housing in Markham. We have assembled an interdisciplinary team of leaders and experts from diverse industries to learn from their shared experiences and kindle further discussion during the breakout session later today. There will be an opportunity for audience participation after the panel discussion, so please hold any questions or comments until you are prompted. At that time, please use the raise hand tool, which you can find by clicking on the participants icon on the Zoom menu at the bottom of your screen. And one of the facilitators will call your name. With that, I am pleased to welcome and introduce Tim Hudak as the panel moderator. Tim is the CEO of the Ontario Real Estate Association, Canada's largest provincial real estate industry association, representing 78,000 realtors across the province. Tim joined OREA after a 21-year career in public service at the Ontario Legislature, including 5 years as a leader of the Progressive Conservative Party of Ontario. Since becoming CEO in December of 2016, he and his OREA team have focused on transforming OREA into Ontario's most effective professional association that delivers high-impact advocacy on behalf of realtors and consumers and provides quality service to its members. OREA is an organization that I believe has an absolutely essential role in influencing and shaping the issue of affordable housing in Ontario. And with that in mind, I am pleased to welcome Tim.
Arvin, thanks very much. Thanks for that enthusiastic introduction. It's great to see you again. Great to work with you again. And I just want to say congratulations to yourself, Mayor Scarpitti, and everyone. I think it's fantastic. I have Minister Hussen on, Minister Clark, Premier Ford. I think it's a testament to the outstanding work that you're doing in Markham, and to have Dr. Friedman as well talking about best projects. Look, I was really excited when Mayor Scarpitti reached out to me to help lead this panel. Number one, it's a great panel, fantastic expertise that you're going to enjoy, and to get a chance to ask your own questions. Number two, I used to live in Markham. It was the early 1990s. Things have changed substantially since then. It's a lot bigger place. But Markham has always been a city that has had, under the mayor and council and staff, fabulous governance. I've known the mayor in our time together in politics be a very progressive thought leader. And Markham has great amenities, fantastic neighborhoods. It's a welcoming city, and it has great heritage. So you put all that together, no wonder its population has exploded over the years. With that, though, comes a number of challenges that we're going to talk about today. I bet some of you watching, if you grew up with Markham, you always knew a community where you thought when you grew up that you could afford a place in the same neighborhood where you're raised by your own parents. Increasing that is difficult, if not impossible, for hardworking families. If you move to Markham, you're looking for rental, you're looking for community housing, harder and harder to find as a result. And we all know that there are serious negative consequences throughout the housing spectrum when people can't find an affordable place to live. You know, your typical family looking for a home to own, they can't find one they can afford, well, then they stay in the rental unit. And then if the rental units are all used up, people trying to get into rental end up staying in community housing, you could have homelessness. It tumbles across the spectrum, and a housing affordability crisis impacts our most vulnerable citizens the most. Let's take a look at some of the numbers in Markham. And again, I think that the mayor, his team, and Dara Lyons, Emily Irvine, have done a fabulous job setting up this conference, and they've also done their homework. All right, so the average price of a home right now in Markham is $949,536. That's 2019 figures. So we know that's probably gone up from there, right? And if you look at, under the provincial legislation, affordability standards, what can people actually afford based on their income in Markham? The thresholds for that would be $471,000 for a home. And for rent, $1,300 a month. So the cost of housing from ownership to rental, way above what people can afford. So no wonder, 1 in 3 owners have an affordability challenge. And if you look at housing throughout Markham, only 5% of housing hits those provincial affordability standards, according to the Markham Housing Survey. 5%, 1 out of 20. And I'm proud to be here as the CEO of the Ontario Real Estate Association. Arvin rightly said, over 80,000 realtors working in communities like Markham, helping build stronger communities. We've done some research of our own, so probably no surprise to you, I think the challenges are going to get worse. As we've gone through the COVID crisis and people have been cooped up in their homes, and as we're looking at more work from home opportunities, which frees up time and resources can improve the quality of life, but it puts pressure on housing. And if you want to see it, you can go to orea.com and you can see our housing research, which are doing monthly tracking, but we're finding now that more young people are accelerating their decisions to try to get a place of their own, particularly ownership. Those that are looking to invest in a home are looking for more space, backyard to kick the ball around with their daughter, maybe a home office. There's been a shift in that direction. And also, people are looking more to the suburbs and exurbs for their homes, moving out of the largest cities like Toronto throughout the GTA. So my gut tells me the housing challenges that Mayor Scarpitti and his team have already laid out are to become even more challenging. So to give you some answers on that, where we're going, what the best approaches are from a public policy point of view, partnerships between the municipality and developers, and then to answer your questions, I'd like to introduce our expert panel. And I will say I had some questions of my own, but we will, just like with Dr. Friedman, open up the floor after about half an hour to your questions. So again, you'll just hit the raise hand feature under participants, and Daryl Lyons will call on you. Then you'll open up your screen and your microphone to ask your question. We'll get into some more details on that later on. All right, let me walk through the panel for you. First, Daniel Bragnolo. Daniel is the Director of Commercial Financing for First National Financial. He's been part of a team there that has raised, get this, $5 billion in commercial financing over the years. Daniel's somebody who believes that challenges create opportunities within deals and they become precedents and structures. So you want to be leaders in Ontario or Canada, Daniel's got some insight into that. He also knows how to use government programs like the CMHC's energy efficiency program to get clients the best advantages possible. He is one of the foremost experts from First National when it comes to affordable housing and helping owners manage the complexities with smart financing solutions. John Fox is our next panelist. He's a partner with Robbins Appleby, LLP. He's a former development executive, so he's been on the builder side. Now he's a leader with Robbins in their housing group. He specializes in real estate development, social and affordable housing, and construction. He's worked with a lot of municipalities when it comes to housing development, affordable housing projects, including the City of Toronto to build 80 units of affordable housing in a high-end condominium building along the waterfront and the development of the region of Peel's housing plan. So he knows what he's talking about. Randy Pettigrew is our third panelist. Randy is the Senior Vice President of Land Development with the Remington Group. Randy's been in the development industry despite his obvious young looks for 25 years, worked both in the public and private sector. He's been developing and managing residential, commercial, and industrial land in pretty well every community in the GTA for the last 60 years. And currently developing one of the largest lead developments in North America, downtown Markham, which will contain approximately 7,000 residential units and 2 million square feet of retail space. And of course, you know her very well, our fourth panelist, Jan De Silva, the president and CEO of the Toronto Regional Board of Trade, one of the largest, and I know this from my own experience, most influential business groups in North America. She is spearheading efforts to make Toronto and the Greater Toronto Area one of the most competitive and sought after business regions in the world. Jan brings more than 14 years of international CEO experience as well to the Board of Trade, building ambitious high growth organizations, including being the CEO of Sun Life Financial's Hong Kong and mainland China offices. She is somebody who believes that the power of economic development can lift communities, and was also the head of the Ivy Asia School from the University of Western Ontario's Ivy School of Business. So with that, let's call up the panelists. And again, folks, we'll take some individual questions as we move forward after my own questions. All right, so let's start out with Jan De Silva for the opening question. Jan, the Toronto Board of Trade, Regional Board of Trade did some fantastic work in the lead up to the 2018 provincial municipal elections around commuting issues, how much people were spending on commuting, the impact on affordability of housing and such. Since you did that pivotal work, we've seen some major changes, with COVID causing people to change their housing choices and work from home creating new opportunities and new pressures. Jen, for the audience here today, would you think these are permanent shifts, and how do you see that impacting on housing choices across the GTHA?
Thanks, Tim. It's a brilliant question. So let me talk about the world that was pre-COVID. What we found pre-COVID is that 76% of our young professionals, their choice of where they bought housing was directly related to what their daily commute requirements were going to be. So you saw a huge concentration of young professionals in downtown cores or closer to their jobs to avoid that commute. Now we do have virtually everyone in the young professional space working from home. The big question of the day is how permanent is this going to be? And I know with the survey work we're doing with young professionals now, even if you look at Google employee surveys they've done, workforce is signaling they want to get back to the office. And we're looking in the Toronto core, about 85% of workers saying when they feel it's safe to do so, they want to return to offices. Google staff is saying about 90%. So I believe there will be some form of hybrid of work from home, but there's still this pent-up demand to get back in the office from a collaboration, problem-solving perspective, and just the socialization that goes on. So how's this going to play out for young professionals? The challenges we had in the old world before COVID, we weren't building enough homes, continues to be a problem. The Toronto area added about 325,000 new jobs through to 2019 in a 3-year period, but only 102,000 new homes. So those that want to work from home will be looking further into the suburbs for larger properties because they can't afford them downtown. Those that don't want to work from home will still be looking for easy commute housing options for them. And the other thing I want to finish on is we can't just think of COVID as having people working from home. We have many essential frontline workers that aren't working from home. Our nurses, our medical assistants, paramedics, they need to be on the job. They don't have the incomes to be able to afford to live in Markham or Toronto or many parts of our region. And that is going to continue to be a big, big problem for us.
Thanks so much. A similar approach to you, John. So COVID and working from home are changing what people are looking for in a home. It's not just AREA that says that, particularly around space and amenities, access to outdoor spaces. Do you think this is a short-term trend? And yes or no, specifically, what do you think the impact is going to be for housing in Markham?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for the question and thank you for the kind introduction earlier on. I agree with what Jan said earlier in the sense that I don't think anybody knows whether there will be a permanent shift in where people live, because they'll be making the same kinds of assessment that they were. But I do think that COVID will drive value into certain kinds of amenities. So when you talk to people, and I talk to my own clients, it's about community, the ability to talk to people over the fence, where previously you were socializing in other ways. It's also about the ability to work from home. So I would expect people to be looking for quiet places to do work so that the opportunity continues to be there in where they live. And for those living in more congregate settings, safe ways of accessing that. So the ability to call an elevator on your phone, for example. But I think because we don't know exactly how that's going to go, it does present a challenge for municipal planning. So, if you're the City of Markham or another municipality, you can't help but be struck by the fact that one of COVID's big impacts is the direct line that's drawn in the minds of everyone between public health and housing. And so when the minister starts talking about, well, we have to make sure we're housing everybody, that goes to the comment about complete communities. It's easy to say, but when you start talking about what that might mean for making sure that nobody's on the street, that's where it becomes particularly challenging. So I do think that COVID will have a big impact on how planning plays out and in the types of housing that happens. If there is a permanent change and prices continue to rise in places like Markham, then the problem is all the more acute because people who live and grew up in the community, as you say, Tim, will find that they're having more difficulty getting into housing, and we already know that we have to deal with people who are living in shelters and housing them. So I think that's where we're going.
Thanks very much for that, John. So let's take what John and Jan had to say around the impacts of these two trends and go to the commercial side. So Daniel Bragnolo from First National, let's talk about commercial properties then. Do you think the shift from towards more work from home is going to cause less demand for commercial space, or will commercial operators look for more space to give people physical distance from their colleagues? What's the impact of being in commercial space, and then particularly for the City of Markham?
So this is something that we've talked a lot about over the last few weeks. I think it's definitely shown that the big office is definitely not the only way to do business. Not that it's not the best way. I think it's all going to come down to balance and flexibility, like everything else in life. A lot of what we've been seeing in terms of polls from our company is some sort of flex arrangement. A couple days from the office, a couple days from home. I think in the short term, there won't be a large shift in demand. I think a lot of corporations will take the responsible approach, spread things out a little bit, make sure everyone is comfortable to come back to the office. I think whatever that next stage of how we work develops is going to be a long, gradual path. Maybe in the long run, it involves a little less core office space, but maybe a little bit more localized office space. I think that from my personal experience, I've been on all three ends. I've worked in a core exclusively, from home exclusively, and in a localized office. And right now, I would say again, I wouldn't want it one way or the other. I think a mix of everything is good. As a company, we were quick and surprised how quickly we were able to shift just over 1,000 employees to work from home over the course of a few weeks when the pandemic started. But right now, our trajectory is we have new office space that's going to come online in a year or two. And we're keeping the same amount of space, again, expecting that might have to spread things out in the short term. But right now, yeah, I don't see any drastic changes like Jan alluded to. It's a lot of demand of people wanting a bit more of a schedule and a routine and some extra interaction that they haven't been getting.
And Randy Pettigrew, Senior VP Land Development, Remington Group. Let me move to you next on this commercial theme. I'm going to actually link the two. So Daniel thinks short term it's hard to see, but we may see a more desire localized for commercial, less in the core. We've talked right off the top about the housing affordability crisis. We'll get into that more often. Do you, number one, do you agree sort of what Daniel said? And I think importantly, is there potential here, Randy, to then convert existing commercial spaces into affordable housing?
Thank you very much. Let me start off by saying this. I totally agree that addressing this issue is a shared responsibility between public and private sectors. Listening to Abby Friedman speak was quite interesting because one of his main themes was these partnerships, and I fully agree these partnerships need to happen. So is there potential to convert commercial spaces into housing products that can address a certain need in the community? 100%. I have absolutely no doubt that municipalities have to look long and hard at existing commercial spaces or even planned commercial spaces and seeing how they can leverage those into a more diverse housing product. I remember, I'm a planner by training, and I remember one of the first things we learned was that when you're developing a master planned community or any neighborhood, you want to provide a range of housing choices to address every segment of the market. You want to provide an opportunity for people to age in place, age in their community, because you build in this support system. So yes, you know, the development community, everybody perceives us as just looking for profits, but that's not always the case. I think a lot of us understand that, you know, what we do long after we're gone and long after people who have known us are gone, that will still be there. It's a legacy and it's not lost on us. Leveraging commercial spaces, great idea. Here's the challenge. When you look at the way master plan communities or any communities are developed, you start with an official plan document. The official plan document prescribes what you can do in an area. It also prescribes what you can't do. And then you look at how you implement an official plan. You implement it through a zoning bylaw. A zoning bylaw by its nature is a negative document. It is a restrictive control on what happens on the lands. So now you look at where we are today. We're hit with a pandemic. Things have changed. Now we're all looking at different opportunities and different ways of moving forward. If, as a developer, I came in with an application today on a piece of property that was zoned or designated for employment or commercial, the process, the way it is today, and Markham is terrific. I will give Markham high credit for being able to address applications in a timely fashion. But even with that, I am looking for, or probably looking at, 6 years from start to occupancy.
Wow.
That is too long. Like, this problem, we're addressing affordability and purpose-built rental, which is great, but we need to look at the systemic reasons why we're here. If we don't understand why we're here today, I don't know how we're going to avoid it in the future. We have to look holistically at the process. Innovation, at Dr. Friedman's innovation and innovative projects that he was showing, love them. Fully gets the juices flowing. But then in the back of my head, I'm saying to myself, if I came in with an application like that, under today's current official plan and zoning regulations, I wouldn't be overly excited about the prospect of moving through the system.
I'm going to come back to that in a bit, Randy, what you talked about there, the red tape, the runaround, and Dr. Friedman had a fabulous presentation. So I want to bear down on that. And I'll remind the audience too, later on around 11:35, I'm going to open it up for your questions. And again, you'll hit the prompt through raise hand, and Daryl will call on you, and you can find raise hand under participants. Jen, I want to link back to, again, the work that the Toronto Region Board of Trade did on affordability issues and what employers can do. As you've seen during this conference, Markham has a huge affordability issue with only 5% of homes hitting the provincial thresholds. But the challenge is that Markham residents are caught in a bit of a squeeze here, right? They make too much money to qualify for government subsidies, but they're having serious affordability issues. So in your research, what can be done to help out Markham residents? And what's the role of business to help them on those housing affordability issues?
Great questions, Tim. Thanks. Let me just talk about some research we've been doing over the past year, working with TD Bank and Woodgreen Community Services. We focused on a deep dive looking at a housing that's focused on our low to middle income workers. And I want to applaud Markham. The draft affordable and rental housing strategy recognizes this and is targeting housing gaps for households earning less than $63,000 a year. These would be nurses, paramedics, service staff in restaurants, salons, retail. They will not qualify for community social housing. They need something in this missing middle. And so what we've found is that in some cases there are opportunities to borrow examples of what already exists across the country. Let's reverse engineer something. My niece teaches up in a remote part of northern Quebec. Part of her job comes with housing in that community. That's a way of recruiting and retaining teachers and, in fact, medical professionals in that part of the country. We need to think about this in the context of our affordable housing issue here. Hospitals, universities, colleges that have land available on their site could be looking at how do they create housing options there. I'm well aware of a number of hospitals in Toronto that are struggling to recruit and retain nurses and medical assistants to work in the hospital simply because commute times and cost of living across the region prohibits any of those types of workforce participants stepping in. So I would say right now, our research, Tim, is very much showing that public sector institutions like hospitals, like post-secondary, also we've seen examples of unions who have had pension funds and access to land who've moved forward in building housing for their workforce of the future. I think those are the very practical, immediate examples that we can be drawing on and looking at moving forward on quickly.
Thanks very much, Jen. John, earlier in the conference, we heard from Minister Steve Clark, particularly Minister Hussen as well. And they both talked about provincial and federal government programs to help on the affordability side. One, particularly the rapid housing initiative was mentioned by the ministers. Do you think, well, first of all, did you like what they said? And secondly, I mean, is that the solution, or what is missing from the toolbox to actually address issues like Markham is facing?
And let me start with what I like about what they said. The best part about what they said is if you were to run those 2 sessions and not know who was talking, you could play a little parlor game called Who's the Liberal and Who's the Conservative, and you'd have a lot of trouble figuring that out because of the focus of the government, both governments, on the practicality of delivering housing right now. But they are both very focused on it, and they're doing that. In the past, that might not have been so. I can tell you, because I've worked a bit with Minister Clark's staff from time to time, they are open to any idea that comes from anywhere to help deliver this. And that's a wonderful place to be. So a lot of the programs they've talked about, they're rolling them out, and they're also open to feedback because they don't always do exactly what it is that they want it to do. So for example, Mr. Hussen talked about the Rapid Housing Initiative. It's a great program, but it is a program that requires a nonprofit or the municipality, but particularly the half that is available to nonprofits, to really be in a very narrow space. You either have land and you need a modular contract, and you need to do that by the end of December, and then you need to have funding by the end of January. If you're going in an agreement of purchase and sale, you're going to have to carry a conditional period across a government review period, which is not going to be the easiest sell to the landowner. So there are sort of holdbacks to that. And possibly the other piece of that is while it helps create new housing, it specifically does not allow anyone to go and seek out the acquisition of any existing housing, and it's used as existing housing, which means that any existing affordable housing in the community today, which is under pressure, is not going to be relieved by this kind of program. So the government should be stepping in and looking at that. Another example on the provincial side, just to give you another example, the province has introduced, to its credit, a development charge deferral. Not particularly well known in the not-for-profit community, so I'm deliberately bringing it up to signal that to the not-profit participants here. But tweaks to that program would allow it to be better used to support affordable ownership housing. So if the deferral can be carried through the course of the first homeowner and concentrated, you could generate greater affordability in that process. Not a difficult tweak to make to the legislation, but still a tweak that would have to be made to give municipalities comfort to implement it in that way. So those are two examples of programs which are out where I hope as people who are driving the implementation of that in the development community and the not-for-profit community are hitting roadblocks, that those respective governments are open to hearing about those and solving those problems.
All right, let's go back to Randy. Thanks a lot for that, John, and the additional aspects that they could put in to make a difference for affordable housing, rental or owned in the Markham across province. All right, Randy, you caught my ears there. 6 years minimum some housing projects. We all hear about the frustration that builders have when it comes to red tape and runaround. We have a goal here through the summit and the mayor's leadership to develop more affordable housing, more rental units, more choice throughout the city of Markham. So how do we structure policy then? You like what Dr. Friedman talked about, it takes too long to get in. I mean, what are the actual solutions so those projects can hit the ground and get people in the homes they can afford?
So if there's one thing that really strikes me about the process is that when you file an application, you're amending something. You always seem to be amending something. So what if we moved into a regime where you have a policy document that is so flexible, it gives the authority and the power to the local councils? Because at the end of the day, I will be the first one to say you can't give developers carte blanche. Like, we will take the path of least resistance. I know we will. So you need to give the power to the local councils. And then the local councils have to have the ability to listen to everything. So when I go to council, I'll give you just a brief example. I remember once going in front of a council, and it wasn't Markham Council, it was another council, so I can say this. And I was proposing to do townhouses on the edge of an existing low density, ground related neighborhood. We had about 50 people show up to the council chambers, ranting and raving, and the world was ending. I get it. I totally get it. Change is hard. Introducing something that you're not used to in your neighborhood is a difficult thing. But to me, what has to happen then is the council has to listen to both sides. They have to give due credit to everybody who shows up. They have to listen to it for sure. But then they have to make a hard decision. They have to make a hard decision as to what's right for the community. And is it right for the community to introduce this product? Well, then they're going to have to take a stance that may not be seen as favorable to the people who show up. It always strikes me that, you know, when you go to a council meeting and you have 5 people show up to the meeting and they are the ones that are complaining, there are thousands that didn't show up. But yet it's those 5 people who seem to be holding sway. It slows the process down. It really does slow it down, because then the council will be put in a position to maybe create a focus group, maybe start community meetings, maybe having a dialogue, all great things, but it all costs time and energy. Sometimes the decision is right in front of you and you have to make a hard decision. So the red tape is built into our system. Our system is got to be torn down and rebuilt to understand. And I'll give you one more thing. I know I go on a little bit about this stuff, but if you look at what's happening today under this this current provincial government with the minister's zoning orders, there's a reason why developers are looking at this minister's zoning order as a really positive thing, because it's set up to get rid of the red tape, to, you know, confine the process to a very narrow spectrum. The interesting thing I find out with these minister's zoning orders is that the province, to their credit, wants to hear from the local municipalities. So the local municipality will get in front of them a report talking about a minister's zoning order. And the local municipality, on the few cases I have seen, the council supports the minister's zoning order. And then it goes on to the province for implementation. I say to myself, well, if that council is supporting that minister's zoning order, why can't that council just support applications that are delivering something that is positive for the community? It eliminates the red tape. It doesn't completely get rid of control. It just eliminates and confines the process to a very narrow spectrum.
Just a quick follow-up on that, Randy. Well, this is the tool the province is using. It's effective. You said municipalities have backed it. I mean, why don't you just cut to the chase? Is there an equivalent for municipality of an MZO for projects of significant importance for housing, for economic development?
Right. There are a number of different tools out there that the municipality can implement. I mean, they can go straight to permit process. They can go to a method of saying, okay, you know, you're going to sign this agreement and this is what you're going to build. There's the permit process is a great way of doing it. Municipalities haven't used those tools in the past, and I get it. It's all new. So, you know, we've got to be open to looking at, just as we're looking at more innovative housing products, we have to look at more innovative policies to allow these housing projects to move forward.
All right, so a good start. Keep going. Daniel, I'm going to pull you up now. Daniel Bregnolo, Director of Commercial Financing of First National. We've talked about policy. Jan has laid some ideas on the table from a provincial policy point of view. John and Randy have talked about local changes and partnerships that can help bring affordable housing. But, you know, no matter what policy or procedures you have in place, you don't have the financing, you're not going to get shovels in the ground. So from your perspective, and what kind of innovative financial models do you see out there? Are there government impediments to making them work when it comes to provision of affordable housing in Markham?
So for us, where we see the most amount of success is when there's coordination. We use the top level financing programs delivered by the federal government, by CMHC, mainly the co-investment fund, the RCFI program, and what we use the most would be the mortgage insurance program for flexibility in affordable housing. So starting with that as a baseline, all three of those programs have varying levels of incentives and benefits that you don't get when you compare it to conventional modes of financing. So where we go with that is where we try to direct a lot of our clients is to look at their local municipalities, their regional governments, because for lack of a better term, an affordable housing agreement can kind of shortcut the process and automatically qualify them into some of these programs. So coordinating that top tier federal financing programs and then getting an affordable agreement from another more local level of government can provide a fast track or additional benefits to getting into those programs. Then when you start to layer those programs together, it starts to chip away at that bottom line of the pro forma and make it a bit more palatable for the developers. Because each and one of these programs have different incentives, different benefits, each project can offer different levels of affordability. I think it's hard to have one program in place that offers affordability incentives for developers, because each development can be so localized to their neighborhood and have so many different factors play into it, that I think if you had a bit of a continuum of incentives, ones that fit into each and every different financing program, you'd have a lot of interest from the developers to see, okay, with this package, we can offer more units that are affordable, or more depth and affordability, and receive this package. Or, you know what, I really just need to use one of these financing programs. So let's go with a program or an affordable agreement that doesn't have as much affordability, but doesn't provide as many additional benefits from the local governments as other incentives. And I think developers will be willing to pick and choose, and each project is going to support more affordability or more depth and affordability. So I think that coordination of the different programs is key when we're talking about trying to get to a bottom line for, say, a new rental development that incorporates a mixed income approach of the tenants.
Thanks, Ed. John Fox, I'm coming to you next about purpose-built rental and also legal best practices, given your extensive legal background. Just want to remind folks here at the Markham Housing Summit, if you want to ask a question of a panelist, please do queue up. You go under the participants button and raise your hand, and Daryl Lyons will call on you in a few moments to ask your question. And think about it too, it's always best if you let me know which panelist you'd like to direct your question to. That'll help us move through more questions. All right, John Fox, your partner at Robbins Appleby, extensive success in working on legal agreements when it comes to affordable housing projects. So what are some of the best practices you'd recommend to those watching today, particularly for the city of Markham? And also, we've not talked enough about purpose-built rental housing. Any best practices there to get more affordable rental units?
Sure, that's a big question. I will just make one comment about what Randy said, that this business about speed is actually incredibly important. So oftentimes government programs are shovel-ready projects, and you need to get ready in a certain period of time. And the zoning is often what stops you. And what he says also about the meeting is critical. I was struck by the Premier's comment about being there for future homeowners. And where the rubber hits the road on a comment like that is when somebody has to stand up and say, you 10 people who live near here, I understand your concerns, but the 100 people who are going to live here also have a right to be housed. And that's why we're going forward. So that's where that little line is not just, it shouldn't just be a throwaway. That's an important statement. So with respect to your question, anybody who's going to build rental, whether you're a nonprofit or a private sector player, there's a whole series of agreements which are the same no matter where you go. So particularly if you're a nonprofit, you'll be looking for a development management agreement, because you might not have the internal capacity that Randy would have available to him internally to do zoning and run through the process. Oftentimes that decision seems to be taken fairly quickly. That's actually probably the most important decision you're going to make, as you're expanding your team into the expertise you will need to actually deliver a project. So it's a very important moment. There will be construction contracts and all that stuff. Where there's differences if you're doing affordable housing is in the relationships with the municipality and the programs that Daniel has mentioned in his work. So those, when a builder, whether private or nonprofit, is accessing those programs, that's reflected in a contribution agreement, usually styled as a forgivable loan type of an arrangement. I won't get into the details. Nonprofits have another opportunity to make a choice between sort of classic financing that First National might offer, and longer term financing that is available through the housing sector and is only really available to nonprofits in that regard. There are definitely some best practices, particularly on that I'm more focused on the nonprofit side, because generally speaking, the private sector knows how to build a rental building. The two comments I would make for the nonprofits is you must worry about the team that you construct, and it's not about the cheapest guy. Cheap can be very expensive in construction, and you want to make sure you're surrounded by good people, and that you're running procurement processes that reflect the quality of the people that you are engaging with. And you need to make sure that your stuff is in order. So nonprofits that may have been around for a while oftentimes have not really updated the minute books and that kind of stuff. And I know it sounds mundane, but when you go to Daniel and ask him for a loan and his lawyer sends me a letter saying, I want all this stuff, and I don't know where it is, then we all look kind of silly, and it takes time. And I'd rather build the confidence of the lenders through having that stuff together. So that stuff is important. That's rarely a problem on the private side, or very easy to remedy. We've talked a bit about partners, so I will offer one best practice with true partnering, which comes from my time at Toronto Community Housing, where we were involved in redeveloping Regent. I would say that the single most important thing we were doing there in the first couple of phases, when things were truly not known, was the partnership was aligned. So you have to be comfortable if you're partnering, saying that it's okay with you, whether you're the public sector or the nonprofit partner, that the private guy makes as much money as possible, because that means you're pulling enough money in to build your own units, or you have your private partner continually focused on cost savings because it's a benefit to them. So alignment is very important. When the alignment goes, that's when the distrust happens, and so on. Alignment and transparency, very important in that kind of context. So I'd say those are the things I would want to communicate to everyone as best practices in those circumstances.
And John, real quick follow-up on purpose-built rental. We've seen a lot of the intervention in the rental market with freezes, for example, a lot more regulation. So what I hear from builders is they're pretty pessimistic about new purpose-built rental. Am I wrong to think that?
Well, there has been changes in the last five years in the number of people coming purpose-built rental. It's also the case that purpose-built rental has, until recently, been the least loved sector in terms of subsidy and support. So, we have a tendency to forget that the single biggest intervention in housing in Canada is the fact that you don't have to pay taxes when you sell your first residence, and that's a program I'm fully on board with. But it is a significant contribution from the public sector to support home ownership, and there's nothing similar in the rental world. The RCFI, which Minister Hussen talked about, the Rental Construction Financing Initiative, has been taken up quite broadly, and Daniel can speak probably even more specifically about how much that's been taken up, because his organization helps do that. But you see a fair amount of that, both with nonprofits and with for-profit providers, because the affordable housing requirements of that program are not as stringent as the ones that we tend to see through the co-investment fund or the old investment in affordable housing program. So there's now a fair amount out there. You asked about the rent freeze part. So, I often wonder whether or not the rent freeze is helping the right people or not, because if you're still in your unit and you're paying the rent, being able to afford the additional 2% might be okay. But once you remove the freeze on eviction, then the people who are most hurt by that are going to be out anyway, and the people who've been hurt by the fact they haven't been collecting rent, landlords, are probably then giving up a rental increase to people who probably could afford it. So I think there's a balance there, which I'm not convinced is quite right. So there's, I don't know the answer to that. Others may have a better, more specific views or have studied the economics of that better, but I would certainly raise the question.
Yep, no, I appreciate that. All right, folks, in about 5 minutes time, we're going to open up the floor to your questions. Again, go through participants, hit the raise hand, and Daryl will queue you up. Please do try to keep it brief and direct the question to which panelists you'd like to hear from the most. All right, Jen Silva, Toronto Regional Board of Trade, President and CEO. Some pretty exciting projects out there capture a lot of attention. Facebook and Google contributing over $1 billion to support the housing needs of their employees. Is this something that could only exist through a Facebook and Google, or do you see any potential for this type of project in Markham and the GTA?
Okay, well, let's unpack what they're doing. Big headlines about Facebookville and Google Town, I think is what they're calling it. If we look at Facebook, what they're planning, it's not just housing. It's a multi-use site. They need to expand their commercial space. They're planning about 1.75 million of office space, 1,500 housing units, a hotel, a cultural center, a transit hub, 125,000 square feet of retail. This is a huge master plan community to give them more commercial space and to enable them to attract and retain the talent that they need. The transit hub is critical to get the service workers that are working in the hotel and retail and everything else to have easy access to that. So that's what they're trying to solve for there. Dare I say Silicon Valley and South San Francisco is even worse than our situation. So we still have a chance to put our house in order. As it pertains to those kind of big private sector investments, I would say unlikely, particularly in a COVID environment where many businesses are feeling distressed. I think the opportunity for the GTHA and Markham, I know the mayor has some really great visions and realistic visions about building out Markham more fully as an innovation center. It's a, how do you think about master planning the community to deliver what you need to be one of the most competitive innovation jurisdictions in the world, to attract the foreign investment, to attract the job creation, to make that all possible. So in thinking about solving affordable housing, it also should be done in the context of what can we do to build the economy here and make sure that the housing plans that we're putting in place are building that kind of multi-use master planned community. I think the more specific, closer to home examples we currently see, Hospitality Workers Union worked on a co-op project in Toronto about a decade ago. University Health Network is working in Toronto Parkdale, releasing some surplus properties. So I think we've seen some small scale activity here. I think there's an opportunity to think more fully about how do we build the future economic zones that we want with all the supporting livability around that to make it really attractive. I think that will bring the employers here, the investment here in Markham and other parts of GTHA. And let me just pause, something that COVID has highlighted, and we're working with municipalities across the Toronto-Waterloo corridor, is highlighting the need for consistent broadband across the whole. So to get tech firms and other kinds of innovators here, we need to solve for the fact that there's parts of Durham that just don't have sufficient broadband access and other parts of the corridor. So we almost need a corridor-wide approach to think about what are the things we need to put in place to be one of the most competitive and sought-after economic zones in the country, in the world. And that includes housing and transit and making things affordable for all types of income levels of workers.
Thanks, Jan. Appreciate those points on the importance of the infrastructure links. As you said, housing, transportation, broadband. Good to hear about some local projects. It may not be Google and Facebook at $1 billion, but good to see the progress.
Yet, we may still get there.
Well, hell, I mean, if anybody can bring in $1 billion from Google and Facebook, it's probably Scarpitti. So it's good that we talked about that.
For sure.
Today. All right, let me wrap up with one last question, and we'll open it up to our Lions after this. I want to go back to Daniel, and Jan had talked a bit about COVID as a concluding question there. So Daniel, affordable housing projects are complex, right? I mean, you've got to deal with a realm of partnerships, a lot of regulation. As Randy and John had pointed out, you may have objections from neighbors. So from a financing point of view, what's the appetite out there? Are financiers willing to put the money into the right conditions, or do they tend to shy away?
So right now, obviously I can speak for First National. We are very interested in financing new construction, affordable housing. We have regular talks about how we can produce more. I would say prior to these programs rolling out in about 2017 with National Housing Strategy, we've probably quadrupled our construction pipeline for rental housing, and it's specifically in relation to the update in the mortgage insurance program for flexibilities in affordable housing. So it's something we're definitely excited about, something that we feel we specialize in multifamily financing. So we definitely want to take the lead in the industry to produce more of it. So I would say from an appetite perspective, definitely something that we're here to do more of, and get excited when we see more of those applications. For our company, CMHC is one of our largest stakeholders. So it's something that is important to them, which in turn makes it important to us. When we're looking at projects, though, when we do receive those first few phone calls from whether it's nonprofits or developers, first question before we even get into the numbers is all about experience and wherewithal, like John was alluding to. Have you or your team build something similar, and can we trust that you're going to be able to take it from start to finish? So if your company or organization hasn't necessarily done it, have you put the right team around you to ensure that it will happen? Next is backing and say emergency funding. If it doesn't go to plan, I don't think construction ever really goes to plan. Will there be sufficient funds to cover any shortfalls or overruns in the budget? So those are kind of where we start the discussion, and then we start to get into the finer details about kind of the pro forma, the operations. I would kind of allude to what Arvin was talking about is definitely build to your market. You might be aligned with another developer who says, this is kind of what we do, this is how we do it. But it might not be the right fit for your demographic, your market. So knowing your market is essential and important. You may be able to scale down your costs, have smaller units, or something you may have to go larger units and start to look at different revenue streams, something that we definitely help with and talk about where kind of other best practices are what we're seeing from other developments and developers. Certain things that we've seen come up in kind of revenue line items is kind of buying bulk telecom, internet, and cable and phone from time to time, and then shifting that to the tenant for a discount.
We got a big stack here. Sorry to interrupt at that point. We got a big stack of folks that are anxious to ask you and John Fox, Dennis Silva, ready pedigree questions. So Daryl Lyons will call upon you, ask you to unmute and put yourself on camera and fire away.
Okay, good morning, everybody. The first question is from Councillor Ho. If you can enable your video and audio, Councillor Alan Ho.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you all for your participation and also your presentation. My question has two parts. Thinking outside the box and affordability. Well, I would like to have some answers on these two parts, because talking about thinking outside of the box. My question is, why don't we go further away, let's say to Asia, instead of having all the examples from some European countries? Because after World War II, a lot of refugees and immigrants getting out of China to go to a lot of Asian places and countries, for example, like Hong Kong, Singapore. And also we have seen many successful examples from Hong Kong and Singapore for addressing housing crisis. So this is part of my question. And okay, my second part of my question is talking about affordability. I think affordability is not determined by those people who work in the ivory tower. Instead, should be determined by the vulnerable community, those people in need. For example, if we take, let's say a 40-foot container as a unit, good for an affordable housing unit, and for rent, let's say $1,000 per month, you will be surprised that you will hear some question from people asking if they could have a half unit, $500 per month for let's say a 20-foot container. So from here, you know that.
You know what, Councillor? Councillor, sorry to
is,
interrupt you at this point. We've got a stack. I appreciate you. You got good arguments there. You got some good questions in, and I want to keep moving. So Jan, Councillor talked about some of the things in Asia. You spent a lot of time there in business. Any comments for how that could fit?
Yeah, no, I fully agree with Councillor Ho. And Councillor Ho, I just wanted to say we really like mass transit rail. I lived in Hong Kong for a long time. We had the former CEO and the chair both in Toronto over the past couple of years. We've had discussions with our city leaders and with the province on the mass transit rail model, which is all about building transit-oriented communities that just happen to have a train station through it. And the example I used earlier with Google would be an example of what happens in Hong Kong, where you've got commercial space, and you've got residential space and retail, and there's a train station that runs through it. So I think the movement that we've seen on projects like the Ontario line, I know Mayor Scarpitti is a very big fan of transit-oriented communities. Those are really good examples of how do we build housing opportunities closer to transit and closer to commercial. So I take your point, but just wanted to assure you we look very, very globally as we're trying to look for solutions.
Super.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jan, for your expertise and insight. Let's move on, Daryl, to the next question. I know we've got a good stack of folks here anxious to get on the record, so let's please proceed.
Perfect. So the next question is from Gavin Bailey. If you can turn on your mic and video, please.
Thank you. Good morning. So I'm with Tridel, and Tridel is not a rental developer at all, but we do partner with REITs and we do partner with affordable housing providers such as Toronto Community Housing. Just as an example, the Alexander Park development downtown is one way that Tridel partners with rental or affordable housing providers. But a major obstacle above and beyond the lack of incentives for the industry to provide affordable housing units is time and this us versus them mentality that we have to deal with on a regular basis. Just by way of example, I have to budget for about 36 months to get through a rezoning process, which is absolutely insane. So what's getting lost in the conversation on affordability is family size units and the benefits that development comes along. So how can we get, and this is ultimately my question to the panel, is how can we get commitment from staff, commitment from political entities to help support tough decisions or make decisions on developments that do hit all the keynotes on affordability, family size units, and the positive aspects that developments bring?
Super. Thanks, Gavin. Thanks for work at Tridel. So just in the interest of time, Randy, I'll ask you to take that question from Gavin, and then we'll go to the next one after that.
Thank you.
Gavin's hit it right on the head. I mean, I think the development community, at least from what I've seen, and maybe I'm just optimistic about this, but I think the development community by and large want to do the right thing. We do want to participate in these kinds of programs, and it's true. Gavin, I think Tridel and Remington are similar in that we're not necessarily geared up to run rental buildings. We're starting to, we're looking at evolving into having a more robust property management company, but we're not there. We need valid, solid partnerships that help us navigate this process. And then when we do figure it out and we do come up with a project, we need to be able to sit down with the council of the day and work out a way of getting this done. And I know the councillors are going to be a little bit skeptical about the end motivations, which is fine, because everything needs to be documented. There has to be agreements, there has to be understandings, so there's no confusion at the end of the day. Confusion on one project is going to cause issues on the next project. We need to have everything ironed out, and it's going to take time. As a developer who has been building our company for 60 years in the GTA, it takes a long time for us to change track. We have been successful at what we're doing. Introduce something new is going to take time, but we're willing to participate. We're willing to do it. I think everybody on this call who knows me knows I'm not a big fan of process no matter what. And it's not because I don't want to do the process. It just drives me crazy that rezoning takes 3 years. that you actually budget that into your pro forma. I'm telling you now, if you budget that into your pro forma, you're also attaching a dollar value to that cost. And that dollar cost is not going to be out of our pocket at the end of the day. It's going to be on the price. Because at the end of the day, we do have a higher power to answer to, and I'm not talking anything religious. I am talking banks. We do have to answer to banks, and they want to see a profit because we are not huge risk takers, and neither are banks. So.
Thanks,
Tim,
Rand.
if I could just jump in as well, I just
Yeah,
want
sure.
to just say I fully agree with the points that John and Randy have been making. And I would say, I mean, there's lots of great strategies that are being put forward to solve gaps in housing. The piece that time after time is missing, it's not about having a strategy. It's about what is the process that needs to be put in place to deliver within a period of time the amount of housing that we need. And time again, I think that's the missing piece. And it's about creating the criteria against which counselors can feel comfortable making decisions. And I agree with the point I think, John, that you made. It's the 10 people that show up ranting and raving that then hold back housing for kids, grandkids, students, international professionals, everyone. And so we've got to put the right framework for action around any strategy, because a strategy is really good intentions. It's the delivery that needs to come from that
Super.
framework.
Thank you. And I was going to ask Randy if First National is also considered a higher power above, but we'll move on to the next question. Please, Daryl.
If they've got the money and they're willing to lend, yes, they are.
Okay, so now we're going to turn over to Jeff. Unfortunately, I don't have a last name. If you can enable your audio and video.
How's that?
That's perfect. And if you can also ask direct your question to what panelists, please. We have to be quick. We're running short on time.
Thank you. I'll address it generally to Tim because other panel members will pick up on this, and particularly John Fox. First of all, my name is Jeff Shankman. I'm on the board of directors of the RENA Foundation, and RENA is a charity which provides, amongst other things, subsidized housing for people with mental, developmental, and physical disabilities. We have successfully completed 2 purpose-built rental community residence buildings in Vaughan, and they house and are scheduled to house 83 people in one and 138 people in another. These are people who cannot live on their own and require assistance and subsidies. So we partnership with levels of government, developers, financiers, our own donors, and we spearhead these projects and develop them on our own. So we have the experience, we have the legal documentation in place, as referred to by John. And
so, Jeff, this is fantastic. Good for you and RENA in doing that. What would you like to, I think probably John's best to answer your question. What is your question?
Here's my question. When can we get started on our next project here in Markham? And that entails a collaboration, in particular with Randy, Gavin, the council, the mayor. But we're the people who can bring other people together and manage these types of developments and manage the rental aspect of them. So when can we get started? That's
all right.
Jeff
wants to get started. He's done it in Vaughan. He wants to do it in Markham. So John, what do you say? What's your advice to Jeff?
Call me tomorrow.
There you go.
Will do.
But I think you already know how to. I think you already know how to get started. Like so. I mean, it's just you're gonna plot out these your approach, and away you go. Like I don't think you need my input on how to get started. I'm happy to help in any way I can.
I know I was a little facetious. What I'd like to do is,
you know what, Jeff? Jeff, awesome work, and I'm sorry to be the heavy here, but we got like a whole whack of folks that want to get on, and Mayor Scarpitti's put together a great panel. He's also got a great audience, so I want to get to the next question.
Thank you all.
Thank you for your work.
And speaking of which, actually, Mayor Scarpitti has a question. So
will we allow it?
So I will try to be quick. First of all, Tim, thanks to you. You've done a great job, and it is tough being the guy that has to move people on. And again, thanks to our panelists. I really have appreciated the straightforwardness of all the comments and what the challenges are. I just wanted to go back to something that Randy. I don't need an answer right now. You can certainly answer it quickly, but I absolutely agree with the comments about process. And I give absolutely, kudos to this provincial government for trying to streamline and trying to cut the red tape. I've had this discussion with the Premier. I think he's done a great job at trying to do this. But, quite honestly, there's a lot more that needs to be done. And the fact that MZOs are being used and being used to get housing out to the marketplace, it is, in essence, it highlights that the framework, the legislative framework that municipalities have to follow handcuff our ability to cut that timeline. And so Randy talked about 6 years. I can tell you in our new expansion areas, we started prior to 10 years ago trying to get that approved. There are not people, this is 10 years later, people have not moved into their first house in that new area. He talked about trying to change zoning, and it was met with opposition. We need conditional zoning. We need conditional zoning. Absolutely agree. We have to now, Tim, hold public hearings on trying to put in 10 townhouses, which, by the way, is the lowest end of the spectrum that parcel may be approved at in the official plan. People come out and object to the 10 townhouses when the developer could have actually built 6 stories.
Wow.
We gotta stop, cut through the process, because I guess the public also gets duped into believing somehow they can stop this stuff when it's ingrained. So conditional zoning is something that we're asking for. Again, I think the MZOs speak to the fact that the policy structure, the legislative framework can't get housing out to the marketplace in a fast manner. And so I'll ask Randy, doesn't have to answer it now, but there's other developers here in this forum. I'd like to hear from you. What else do we need to change? Because clearly, as much as has been done so far, more needs to be done. And if I can take some executive privileges here, Tim, I think we're okay to go to about 12:05. I appreciate we're into the lunch hour, but I think people can quickly grab a lunch. And I know Christine will not mind us eating while she's doing her presentation.
There you go. We heard it from the boss, 12:05. All right, because it's great. We have more questions here. Randy, I think the mayor was directing that particularly to you, and he did talk about conditional zoning to accelerate projects like that one, the 10 townhouses. What do you think?
Yeah, no, that's a great solution as far as it can go. I mean, the mayor's right. I mean, their hands are tied by a lot of different provincial documents and policies. So I sympathize with them, because I know, with my conversations with most of the council sitting today, they do want to see these projects moving forward. But the policy at the provincial level and at the regional level really frustrates everybody. And I know we all are faced with it. Unfortunately, it's going to be hard to change, but we have to keep trying. And if Frank wants to, if the mayor wants to sit down and discuss this conditional zoning idea, I would be more than willing. And I would actually be willing, I will say this right now, Mr. Mayor, I will be willing to put a site forward that we can work together on, and we can try this out. It would be an interesting site to select, because it has regional permission now to be residential, but it needs a municipal official plan, a municipal zoning, and ultimately a municipal site plan. So if we want to use that as a test project to see how fast we can move it through the system, I would be more than willing to put that in as a purpose-built rental site.
There you go. Look at this drama happening today, right? First we get Jeff and Rena, and John jumps on that. The mayor talks about conditional zoning. Randy jumps on that. We should do this more often. All right, Carol, let's see who else we've got lined up here.
Okay, and we also have Prafulakani. If you can turn on your audio and your video, please, and ask your question, and please direct it to whichever panelist. Okay. All right, so we will continue moving on. So if we can have Billy Yip. Oh, hang on. Raffle, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Perfect. Please ask your question.
It's not a question, but I would like to make a comment if I may. I'm with Mortgage Alliance Commercial, and we have financed 2 affordable housing projects with the special program with CMHC at an interest rate of 1% or 1.2, something like that. So, and we have people in our office who specialize in this and the expertise to be able to help any developer who wishes to proceed on that in that direction. So financing is available. It's right there with the special program from federal government and CMHC.
Super. Praful, thank you very much. It's great to hear. Congratulations on that success. And Daniel, this sounds like, even though it wasn't a question, this is an area of your expertise. Those other folks like Praful in the audience here, how could they take advantage of this type of program?
Yeah, it's one of those tough things because everything's constantly moving. What we've actually heard in those particular programs with the extra benefits in terms of the interest rates is there's been such high demand that the budget is almost at capacity already for 2021. So looking at co-investment funding as well, looking at the mortgage insurance flex program will be important as well. But again, it's coordinating with all the different levels of government to make sure that that you're getting into the appropriate programs.
Super. All right. So Daryl, what do we have next? Praful, thank you for that intervention.
Thank you. It'll be Billy Yip, please. If you can turn on your audio and video and direct your question to the panelist.
Hey, Billy.
Hi, good morning, and well, actually good afternoon. And for me, myself, actually is a real estate practitioner for over 25 years. And here I salute to our CEO, Tim Hudak. Thank you for all your good work and hard work, and to put this all together. And also the one special thing is put the cooperation into the real estate environment so that we can incorporate our own company right now.
Oh, God bless you, Billy. You get 2 questions for those kind words.
And the question is more towards to Randy. Now, what I'm looking at here is recently I've been working with developers and investors now while trying to put a project through for rental housing for senior homes for over 1,200 units. I'm working towards that. But listening to all this, to the panel here, I also have an understanding or maybe a suggestion. I think what we are looking at is always when we have a negativity, between the community and saying that, give it hands up and say no, to townhouses and all this, because they're kind of worried about affecting their house appreciation value in the neighborhood. And that's why they are saying no. Mm-hmm. But if we can actually do affordable housing by converting the existing hotels in a commercial area, and let's say because of the hospitality industry has been hardest hit by this pandemic, and then if we could actually, can convert the hotels in Markham area into affordable housing, either for rental or for maybe rebuilding them, into
Billy,
bachelor or smaller units.
Great question, Billy. I mean, let's put that then to. So you said that to Randy. Billy, thank you very much. Yeah. What do you think of Billy's idea about using the hotel properties, maybe underperforming, and converting them to affordable housing, ownership, or rental? Randy?
It's an interesting idea. We happen to own a few hotels in and around the Markham area. It sounds like a great idea, but honestly, logistically, I don't think it is really doable. But you did hit on something very interesting, and I think we have to project it a little bit further down the road. There's a lot of existing communities, not only in Markham, but in the 905, that around the edges have land uses that perhaps should be looked at closer by municipal planning staff and by councils as a potential site or sites for conversion. And there's different ways of leveraging those sites. So as a developer, I look at my cost for any project. One of my big costs today is land. You look at everything else it's all pretty much predictable. The cost of land has gone absolutely crazy. I am shocked when I look at the cost of land today, and I'm in the industry. So if you look at some of these sites, let's take it and say that it's backing onto an existing residential neighborhood, and it's an employment use. So it's a site that's zoned and designated to have a one-story industrial building, and it's in an employment zone. Well, employment zones from a planning perspective are almost untouchable. But from a development standpoint, I can look at that site and I can say, okay, I know what that land is worth as a development site. Let's work together and let me convert that into a residential property, and then we can have a bundle of objectives. I should be able to get some market housing on it. I should be compelled to build rental housing on it as a component. And if there's a way of doing it, I set aside a piece of property for affordable housing. Now, we haven't talked about this at all this morning, and I think it's very important to talk about. There's two aspects to this discussion. There's housing affordability and there's affordable housing. As a developer, housing affordability is something I can do. I can find a way through this process to figure out how to do housing products that are more affordable to a larger segment of the population. When it comes to affordable housing, I'm not equipped to do it. I'm not equipped to enter into subsidies programs. I'm not equipped to run an affordable housing project. And nor do you want me to, because I will do a terrible job at it, I'm telling you now. So partnerships have to exist. Somebody has to bring all this together. I'm willing to participate in these discussions, but at the end of the day, I don't really want to own an affordable housing project. I want to build affordable homes, but that's a different aspect. So we have to get in our mind, there is a very clear distinction between the two aspects.
That's a great way to wrap there, Randy, on the difference between affordable housing and affordability in the housing market. So folks, the magic of the mayor's virtual gavel gave us to 12:05, so we're running up on that. So I have the privilege of thanking the audience. Those are great questions on a range of topics. And I, on behalf of the audience, to thank our outstanding panel. So Daniel Breganolo, Director of Commercial Financing for First National, John Fox and partner, Robbins Appleby LLP, Jan De Silva, the President and CEO of the Toronto Regional Board of Trade, and Randy Pettigrew, Senior VP of Land Development with the Remington Group. Fantastic job. Really appreciate your dedication, time, and your expertise in answering the questions of our panel. This is fantastic. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tim.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Thank you very much, Tim. Really appreciate you doing this. You're an absolutely amazing moderator. You've, if this was a live in-person event, we would be standing up and giving a standing ovation, not just to you, Tim, but to all of our panelists, including Janet, Randy, Daniel, and John, because it was quite thought-provoking, a fascinating discussion. It's making me think about the processes we have here in Markham and across the GTA with my colleagues, and you know, the need for speed, the need for efficiency, the absolute opportunity we have to be nimble and really look at things like zoning, also incentives, the financial aspects, working with CMHC. What all of this really means, Tim, is that it's about partnerships. And to me, this is the secret sauce to tackle and solve today's complicated problems. From today's discussion, it's evident that there are a lot of opportunities for partnerships to learn from our collective experiences and to find ways to overcome the obstacles about increasing the supply of affordable housing. As much as we'd like to move on to the next segment, it's been very captivating morning. I think it is time. It is going to be a short break. So grab your lunch. We'll be reconvening at 12:15 p.m. for the afternoon segments. Please stay connected to this meeting, as we'll have a rolling presentation running on the screen. If you get disconnected, you can rejoin the summit by using the same Zoom link that you used this morning. So again, we're going to reconvene at 12:15. Thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone back. Earlier this year, Markham City Council received a draft affordable and rental housing strategy and directed staff to undertake public consultation on its policy framework and recommendations in the strategy. Our next segment is a presentation from Christine Pacini of SHS Consultants on the draft strategy. Christine will provide us with an overview, including its key components. Christine Pacini is a co-founder and partner at SHS Consulting, specializing in the housing field. Working primarily in the public and not-for-profit sectors, Christine has more than 30 years of professional experience in the areas of research and policy, management consulting, and affordable housing development. Christine has had an integral role in the preparation of more than 200 housing and related studies and has acted as project manager in the development of a wide range of affordable, supportive, and transitional housing projects, from housing for seniors to housing for people with accessibility needs and large families and youth. Christine was on the board of directors for the Habitat for Humanity between 2010 and 2020, including a time as chair. So welcome, Christine. It's good to have you back with us today.
Thank you so much, Arvin. What a great morning. Fantastic speakers. And I believe they've created so much inspiration for us for the rest of the day. As Arvin said, I'm going to bring you up to speed on where the City of Markham is in terms of their housing strategy. I will provide you a bit of an overview of why the strategy update was undertaken. So there was a strategy prepared in 2010, but since then, as we've heard this morning, many things have changed. So this strategy is meant to identify current and emerging housing needs in Markham. It's also meant to inform the city's responses to the region's proposed incentives for the development of rental housing. And for those of you that are following it, the region has been enhancing its incentives on a regular basis, which is wonderful. Another important aspect of this strategy is developing an inclusionary zoning framework for Markham. As we heard, the importance of leveraging and being consistent with provincial and federal policies and initiatives is important, and we've tried to do that in this strategy. And finally, we'll share with you some of the draft actions that those of you that are staying with us this afternoon can comment on and provide us more ideas. As was mentioned, we started this work back in early 2019. Our needs assessment was presented to Council in April of 2019, and that's when the 3 gaps that you've been hearing a lot about today were identified. The phase 2 work pretty well wrapped up from our end in February of 2020 with a presentation of the draft strategy. But in between then, many consultations and engagements with many of you on the call and also presenting took place. In terms of who we engage with, we were absolutely thrilled, and it was very beneficial to the process, as today has been, to have the mayor hosting most of our sessions. So there were 2 working sessions with private developers in June and September of 2019. There was a session also with the not-for-profit providers and developers, as well as support service agencies in York Region. We also had a special session with the various levels of government to get their feedback and input into the strategy. In terms of what we heard, some of what we heard today, which is good, but we also heard new things today too. We heard that policies, that we should ensure that policies support the development of complete communities. We've heard that several times. So our communities should be including housing for families, people with disabilities, smaller households, and the aging population, as well as, of course, low-income households. One of the things we also heard is the need to educate and raise awareness of the need for a broad range of housing, including, of course, affordable housing in Markham. In terms of the inclusionary zoning policy, we heard it should be flexible and monitored on a regular basis. We also heard about the importance of providing incentives, and as we heard earlier today, both financial and non-financial incentives. So that could be the fast tracking to encourage the development of affordable and purpose-built rental housing. And finally, the importance of land and using land more efficiently was through land sharing, etc., was identified. I'll just quickly recap the gaps and the definition of affordable housing. Many people have already shared some of this with you today. Here's the snapshot of what was affordable or what is affordable. And I want to emphasize this is the upper, threshold. So in terms of the definition, Markham's official plan uses a definition that's consistent with the provincial policy statement, which is housing that costs less than 30% of household income for the lowest 60% of household income levels within the area. So what that means in Markham is the upper end threshold of affordable ownership would be $471,000. And that would be affordable to households that are earning less than $123,000 per year. And then in terms of rent, it's rent at $1,137 per month. In terms of the gaps, you heard some of these today, but there's a few more that I'd like to highlight for you. So yes, 1 in 3 households you heard is spending more than 30% of their income towards housing costs, but 1 in 5 is spending 50% or more of their household income on housing costs. And if you look at the quick snapshot of the social housing waiting list in York Region, that list has grown by 175% in about a 10-year period. The wait list is over 16,000 in York Region, and there's 12,000 households waiting for subsidized housing here in Markham. Part of the reason why that there's an affordability need is the really tight, the very tight rental market in Markham. First of all, there's very little purpose-built rental housing. There's about 1,600 units total in all of Markham. That's putting pressure on the vacancy rate, which, as you can see, has decreased to 1.2% in 2019. In terms of the secondary rental market, that includes condos that are being rented out, houses, etc. That's also experiencing very tight vacancy rates. The condo rentals are at about 0.8%, and we know that the rents in those buildings are usually much higher. What else is causing issues for Markham residents is the significant rent increases that they've been experiencing in the last 10 years, and most importantly in the last 3 years, where we saw significant increases. And as you can see in this chart here, those increases are not keeping pace with inflation and probably what individuals are earning. In terms of ownership, house prices, the average house resale price in Markham has doubled over the last 10 years, or the 10-year period 2008 to 2018. We have seen some diversity of the housing stock, and this is good. What it has shown is some of the new rental units that are being built are affordable to those at that $471,000 mark. However, they're almost all 1-bedroom units, so this would not be appropriate for anyone that wants to share accommodation or, of course, for family. So really, the current and emerging housing gaps are making rental and home ownership unaffordable to the average household here in Markham. In terms of the gaps, I'd like to just highlight the 3 main gaps that form the framework of the policies moving forward and all the recommendations. So the first gap is that there's a need for housing options that are affordable to households of low incomes and persons needing supports to live independently. And these options should include smaller dwelling units, family-sized units, and housing to facilitate aging in place. As we've heard, purpose-built rental is in huge demand in Markham, and something that we hope to encourage through the policies. And then the third gap is around the need to encourage the development of ownership options that are affordable to households with moderate incomes and that are appropriate for the larger family households. I'm now going to provide you an overview of the draft strategy, which we're hoping to receive input on later on in the workouts and the breakout sessions. In terms of the vision, you've heard a lot today about complete communities. So the vision of this strategy is in keeping with the vision that was developed with the community back in 2010. It was validated again recently through this process, and it is in keeping with the city's recently released strategic plan. So that vision is to support the social and economic vitality of the City of Markham through the facilitation and provision of a range of housing options for Markham residents and workers throughout their lifetime in order to sustain a more complete community. That's the vision. We've developed 3 goals that are primarily based on those 3 gaps I just mentioned. So the first goal is to increase the supply of affordable rental housing options, particularly for small and larger households with low incomes, and that meets their needs in terms of size, accessibility, and support services. Our second goal is to stimulate the development of ownership options, particularly larger options for families which are affordable to households with moderate incomes, as well as those with low incomes. And then finally, as we've mentioned before, the expansion of the supply of purpose-built rental throughout the Markham area. So we have developed a series of actions, and these are, there's 34 actions. We looked at policy changes, financial incentives, advocacy, partnerships, and education as a way to both frame and develop those actions. The one thing I did want to mention is the City of Markham's official plan policies with respect to housing goals and objectives are very progressive. Where we probably need a little bit of work is what we heard about earlier today, and that's around the zoning bylaws themselves. But there's a lot of opportunities for moving forward on the affordable housing stream. Okay, in terms of policy, I'll just briefly outline the ones that are included, hopefully in your handout if you have it. The first one is to set annual housing targets. We do have targets, but what we're looking for is more detail around the type, the tenure, the affordability of those targets. We're also looking to refine the definition of affordable ownership. So it isn't just the one figure you just saw, 471,000. It is more geared to the number of bedrooms being provided and the income decile. One of the important outcomes of this work is the possibility of developing and implementing an inclusionary zoning policy. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a few minutes. Ensuring there are no barriers to home sharing and innovative home housing forms. There's a number of actions around that. And as I mentioned, the policy framework is in place, but it's the zoning bylaws that we need to pay a bit more attention to so that co-housing, co-living, and ideas like modular microhomes can possibly be accommodated. Reducing parking requirements where appropriate is another action that's been recommended. And then we've heard quite a bit about the importance of land. And so the idea here is to use surplus or underutilized city-owned land for affordable and supportive housing. And then the last action here is for Markham to continue to support projects receiving government funding. And those of you that have partnered with Markham know that they've had a long history of supporting community-based not-for-profits in helping them achieve government funding. In terms of the financial incentives package, I was really happy to hear that earlier today, financial incentives are required, but equally important are the non-financial, such as the fast tracking. And that is embedded in this action 15, some of the ideas that we heard earlier around how to bring projects to construction start earlier. There's also opportunities for incentives in terms of energy efficiency and other incentives that might be available. One of the things mentioned in some of our consultations is the need to consider an ongoing program to provide these incentives. So right now, it's as people, most people need to go, or most groups need to go to council. So some sort of ongoing program. In terms of advocacy, so we heard, I think, from John and others this morning about there does still need to be some tweaking to some of the policies that have emerged from both the federal and provincial government in the last while, and these have been very welcome. But enhancing the co-investment fund, enhancing some of the first-time home buyer incentives by actually extending or expanding the eligibility. Some of the other ideas that came forward is the possibility of advocating for an HST relief for affordable housing providers that are building new housing, enhancing the community housing benefit. And the last one is very important for those organizations building supportive housing, and that's finding a way to align the funding application processes between the bricks and mortar and the support services. There was some ideas flown around having CMHC fix their rate for the period of the affordability. Oops, sorry about that. And other areas around advocating to the province to increase their capital funding, possibly share the non-residential speculation tax revenue with municipalities, provide land at no or a reduced cost, also help with the streamlining of the approval process. So this is where provincial agencies such as possibly the TRCA are involved in so having them also help with streamlining the process. And around monitoring inclusionary zoning, this is very new. I don't think there's a municipality yet in Ontario that has this in place. So there'll be an important role for the province to monitor and see what tweaks might need to happen. And also advocating to the region to develop a home sharing pilot project that we can talk a bit more about later. In terms of partnerships, we heard a lot about the importance of this, and you've heard the mayor's commitment to helping make affordable housing happen in Markham. So there is a role for Markham to facilitate the development or redevelopment of vacant or underused properties, and this could be land owned by faith groups, the various levels of government, possibly nonprofits, but others that are interested in affordable and supportive housing. And there was also mention about the need to support people that are living in in affordable and supportive housing by supporting social enterprises which provide employment opportunities and trainings for these individuals. In terms of education, increasing the awareness of the need for affordable housing and purpose-built housing has been identified. We heard too about the capacity, so increasing the capacity and knowledge of the private, the not-for-profit sector in order for more affordable and supportive housing to be built. And this might be through educational material, workshops, etc. And also promoting alternative forms of affordable ownership housing. We're hearing a lot about shared equity, rent to own, life lease, etc. So promoting those alternative forms. All right, I'm just going to spend a few minutes, and I know I have to wrap up quickly, on the recommended inclusionary zoning framework. So this is action 3 in the strategy. For those of you that aren't aware, inclusionary zoning is a tool that's been used by municipalities to increase the supply of affordable housing. It typically requires that developers dedicate a portion of new residential developments to affordable housing. We did spend a lot of time with developers and not-for-profits talking about this framework. So what I'm outlining here is the proposed framework for the affordable, for the IZ policy in Markham. So of course, part of the requirements is that it's located along major transit station areas. But what we heard from the Markham community is they'd like to expand that into community planning permit systems. So areas where public transit is accessible and where we could further expand the IZ policy. We're looking at a development that is at least 100 units. And in terms of the affordable housing contribution, a detailed analysis has been prepared or was prepared by NBLC. And what we're finding, or what the analysis showed, is that what would be appropriate at this time is an affordable housing contribution of about 10% of GFA, gross floor area, in a condominium example. If it's a rented condo situation, 5% of gross floor area. And right now in Markham, it's not being recommended that affordable housing would be a requirement of new purpose-built rental, primarily for all the reasons you heard earlier about the challenge in just getting purpose-built rental in the city of Markham. There will be a preference for units to be provided on site, and if not, higher contributions would be required. One of the things that's important that currently in the IZ policy is that 40% of the units the affordable units must be 2 and 3 bedrooms. We're looking at an affordability period that's at least 25 years with a phase out and possibly longer. And this is really a tool that's geared to that missing middle that we've been hearing about. So roughly the 3rd to the 6th income decile. And then part of our plan is to ensure that inclusionary zoning is reviewed at least every 5 years, and that reports come to council every 2 years to track the performance. In terms of next steps, so today is part of the next step. So as the mayor probably mentioned, this report was first presented back in February, right before COVID, and we were ready to plan the Housing Summit a month or so later. Here we are 6 or 7 months later, but so happy that we have been able to do that today. So this afternoon will be an opportunity for you in the breakout sessions to provide us your input. Staff will be consulting further on the draft strategy and IZ framework during the months to come. And the plan is for a final affordable and rental housing strategy and inclusionary zoning framework to be presented to Development Services Committee later on in 2021. That's my presentation. I don't want to hold you back from from the next part of the session, so thank you for that.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Christine, for your presentation and for providing us today with an overview of our draft affordable and rental housing strategy. So while we don't have time for questions right now on this presentation, we do hope that it has provided a better understanding of the work that the city has been undertaken to address the need for affordable and rental housing in the city. There will be plenty of opportunities to share your comments and feedback on the draft strategy as we undertake consultation, and I look forward to hearing about everyone's ideas and solutions. At this time, I would like to thank those that have joined us today for the live streaming portion of the event, which will be coming to a close. I really appreciate you taking an interest in the important work that we are doing here at the City of Markham to address affordable housing. Please refer to the contact information on the slide beside me for staff contacts that are working on the strategy and to reach out to them with your ideas and comments. You can also visit us at markham.ca/ excuse me, markham.ca/affordable housing for more information. I would like to wish those that have joined us for the live stream event a wonderful afternoon, and all the other participants to please wait in the meeting for the next segment to begin. We are now closing the live stream portion of this event. Thank you. Okay, so far we have heard about barriers and opportunities to achieving affordable housing from subject matter experts and thought leaders from both the public and private sectors of the housing industry. Now we want to hear from you. In a moment, we will be breaking into smaller groups for facilitated discussions to hear your thoughts about the barriers and solutions to providing affordable and rental housing in the City of Markham. You will see a link appear in the upper middle of your screen. Please click it to take you to your breakout room. If you do not end up in a room, please just wait. One of our staff will contact you to assist. If there are any technical issues, it's as easy as just leaving this meeting and reconnecting using the same link that you used this morning. At the end of the breakout session, you will be automatically returned to this main meeting room for a short recap and wrap up of today's event. Thank you. All right, I'd like to welcome everyone back. Hope you had a great discussion in your breakout sessions. And I'm going to take a couple of minutes right now. First of all, I heard that the breakout discussions were fantastic. I've had staff behind the scenes getting comments and feeding them, and there were some really good takeaways and out-of-box solutions to help us address our housing crisis. The barriers and solutions that were discussed, I'm just going to take a minute to go through some of them. Let's take a look at some of the barriers that were discussed. First of all, one of the key recurring themes from the breakout groups was cost. Cost of land driving the pricing of houses up, development charges, high development charges according to some, fees, development fees, planning fees, engineering fees, and so forth. Heard about cash in lieu of parkland. We heard about interest charges on mortgages and the time associated with development and that being a factor, and also rising construction costs, material costs, and so forth. So there's a whole bundle around costs as being a challenge to providing affordable housing in our community. There's also quite a bit of discussion on process. Specifically, there was discussion about the planning process, the fact that the process is lengthy. Frequently, there's community opposition. This is increasing in areas of development around intensification, nodes, corridors, where there's density proposed. So community opposition and NIMBYism was something that was discussed. Parking requirements in today's world, especially in areas where you have transit supportive developments, it was felt that parking requirements are onerous at times. And one that we've heard about during the panel session, and we're hearing about again in the breakouts, is the inflexibility of some of the planning processes, especially around zoning. And that is a recurring theme from today. Finally, partnerships. It was mentioned that we've heard a lot about partnerships today, but how do you really make it happen? So there is no framework to work collaboratively to make partnerships happen. So that's seen as a barrier, and just an increased need for agencies, conservation authorities, the region, the municipality, and others to work together. So those are some of the challenges that I've noted from the breakout sessions from today. Now, in terms of opportunities or solutions, there's quite a bit here. So I'm not going to go through them all, but just I'll highlight a few of them. One is that there's employment lands across the greater Golden Horseshoe, employment lands in the region, employment lands in the city. Perhaps we should be looking for opportunities to allow for easier conversion of such employment opportunities, and then partner with the development community to provide affordable housing, looking for mutual benefits for the municipality and the development community, while allowing for greater density. So there's a bit of discussion around employment lands. There was also a discussion of the fact that we need to plan our transit-oriented communities. We need rail integrated developments. We have the rail lines, the Stouffville line, for example. We need to plan these to be higher density, integrated. But in order to be able to do that and to do that efficiently, we cannot get caught up in process. We need the necessary land use and planning tools to make that happen. Integrated transit supported development quickly. We also, kind of similar, but we talked about one of the sessions, how can we repurpose underutilized spaces? So this is parking lots, municipal parks, I guess, open spaces. How can we repurpose these for affordable housing? it was felt that this would address the high land cost barrier. And there's a lot more, but I'll just summarize by saying a key point that came out is that if we cannot control the cost of land, at least we should focus on what we can control. And it was felt that there are quite a bit that we can control, from planning process to other aspect of development fees and charges and so forth. So those are some of the barriers and solutions that came out. There's a lot more that came out. Staff will be summarizing it all. These conversations across the various levels of government and all sectors, I believe, is really important. It is through the partnerships I mentioned, working together, that we'll be able to overcome the barriers and realize innovative ways to increase the supply of affordable housing in Markham. All of the work that from today's breakout session will be used to inform the future path forward to bring affordable and rental housing to Markham. If you have any additional questions or comments, you can find staff contact information in the draft affordable and rental housing strategy brochure that you received. Or you can just send an email to Daryl Lyons, which is dlyons, DLYONS @markham.ca. So once again, I'd like to extend my appreciation to our keynote speaker, A.V. Friedman, our moderator, Tim Hudak, as well as our panelists, Janet De Silva, Randy Pettigrew, Daniel Bragnello, John Fox, our presenter, Christine Piccini, and all of you for joining us today at this summit. I'd also like to thank Mayor Scarpitti for convening the summit and putting the spotlight on this important issue, and to all the staff from across the city today that were working behind the scenes on the technology side, helping facilitate sessions. To everyone, a very big thank you, especially to our two key architects of this summit, Daryl Lyons and Emily Irvine. I'd like to thank you both for the wonderful work you have done here today. Now I'm going to hand it over to Mayor Scarpitti for his concluding remarks. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Arvin. And you certainly had a hard task there trying to summarize so many of the good points that we heard in the sessions. I did try to jump around to a couple of them and want to say it was absolutely engaging to hear the discussion that was happening there. I do want to say thanks to you, Arvin. Thank you for being our MC, and also thank you for the leadership that you've shown as our Commissioner of Development Services. You and I and others, and I know it's something that your staff continues to work out. We want to make sure that our community ultimately is a community that everyone can be a part of. And I really do say thank you for your ongoing work. Thanks to all of our participants. I know we were live streaming earlier and we had a bigger audience watching, and I know that we'll continue to offer this up online so that people can go back and reference it. But thank you to all of you for showing up today. Thank you for your positive comments on the summit itself. But I really appreciate the way that you were straightforward and provided your feedback and suggestions. We're going to take all of that certainly as we move forward. But today, no doubt, has been a very, very important part of our journey. And your engagement, your involvement does not end with this summit. Arvin Prasad just commented on how you can continue to provide feedback. We absolutely have all of your names, and we will continue to communicate with you as well to ensure that you know where we are in the process. So over the next few months, we'll be taking all of the feedback that we heard last year, the culmination of the more granular suggestions that we heard today, and hearing a response to the many ideas that were presented by Dr. Avi Friedman and our panelists. That was all very good and will certainly help us in finalizing our affordable housing strategy. Now, we do plan to meet again in the new year, what I'm dubbing as Housing Summit 2.0. And really what that will be certainly the culmination of all the discussions, the housing strategy that will be dealt with by council. And I can tell you that we are looking at inclusionary zoning, among other tools, to help facilitate more construction in our community of affordable housing units. And at Housing Summit 2.0, not only will we give you an update of all of that, but we hope that the many discussions we've already started over the past few months, even though we were in the middle of a pandemic, I have to say we've been having discussions with the building industry, with some landowners, to see how we can specifically work with them to provide a range of affordable units, be they for ownership or for affordable rental. And I know some other speakers have made the distinction today. You know, in the past, we always struggled, mostly because there wasn't the commitment from other levels of government on funding subsidized housing. And I have to say, we've never turned our back on that. And I want to thank the many groups, there's many, but certainly in particular, Micah, who's had a long relationship with the City of Markham in providing subsidized housing and market rent for residents in our community. And I take tremendous pride in the work that they've done and the projects that they've completed. And quite often I'll even challenge some of our residents to point out where their projects are in the community. And I know that we have co-ops that exist within our community, and organizations like RENA and others who are doing work throughout York Region, throughout the GTA, and see wonderful opportunities to continue that work here in the City of Markham. It's been a concern, as I said, of council. That's why we've put the resources into this whole process. That concern that's reflected through each member of council is really a concern that they hear from the community. And I get back in many respects to the points made at the beginning of this summit. When a professional person who has a decent job, who's earning a decent salary, can no longer afford to buy their first home in the City of Markham, a home that perhaps is no bigger than many of the garages that are attached to some of the single family homes. It's a concern. It is a concern, not just for them, but we should be concerned as a community. We want this young talent to stay here. We want the young talent to thrive here. They are our future. And if we don't give them an opportunity to start that future here in our community, that doesn't bode well for a successful community. So I know at one time, you know, and it goes back many years, we increased the density in some of the newer subdivisions. We allowed a greater mix of housing. Dr. Avi Friedman showed you some of the traditional subdivisions that have been built in many communities across North America. So when we expanded north of 16th, we increased the density in those communities to provide a greater range. Over time, you know, and today there'll be townhouses that sell in Markham for $1.5 million. One time that townhouse was affordable for a young family. And over the last few years, I kept hearing from people that the development community, well, it looks like condominiums are going to be the starter home for many. And now again, those condominiums are out of the reach of young people who again are working, who have decent jobs and decent salaries. And that's the level of the crisis that this has reached. We do have to provide a broader spectrum. And again, I know that all of council is committed to it, and we've got great support from our staff. And as good as the partnerships have been in the past, we have to develop more, and we have to strengthen those partnerships. So again, I look forward to keeping in touch with all of you with the updates. Please, if it's tomorrow or on the weekend or even in a couple of weeks from now, and as we move forward to finalizing our housing strategy, you do want to provide more ideas or feedback, please reach out. And I too want to say, I know Arvin, you did it, but I have to say the presentation by Dr. Avi Friedman was wonderful. Really got us thinking about this issue on so many different levels. Some we've discussed before, but you know, when he made the point that we're building homes like we used to build them in the 1940s, yeah, we've made some changes. We've made them more energy efficient, but essentially the construction process hasn't changed all that much. In Canada's high-tech capital, perhaps there's a bit of a challenge to all of our builders that do business here in this community to maybe start changing the way they construct homes, to use that technology, again, to drive costs down and make it more affordable. So thank you for that thought-provoking presentation, Dr. Freeman, and of course to Tim Hudak, our moderator, and as Arvin indicated, all of the panelists, people who are experts in their own right, who have come together to provide us a lot of great commentary. Thanks as well, once again, to the representatives from the other levels of government. First and foremost, the recognition that we do need to work together. And as far as we've come, there's more to do. And again, to Arvin, you are going to be charged with this work, along with Daryl Lyons and Emily Irving. So thank you for the ongoing work with the strategy. And aside from our panelists, I also want to say thanks to Christine Piccini. Christine is a consultant. Yes, she's getting paid for what she does, but I've now had the pleasure of listening to Christine through various sessions. And I'll tell you, this isn't just a job for her. It's in many respects a calling. So I thank you, Christine, for the incredible insight and passion that you've brought to us as well. And as Arvin indicated, all of the other work that happens, that's just part of our normal process. I do want to say thank you to Daryl and to Emily for the work that they did in putting on this summit. I also want to thank Brian Froist, my chief of staff, John Wong, who's an incredible city employee who is always called upon for our technology needs, and certainly many other staff in various departments. One thing is loud and clear when you come to Markham: it doesn't matter where the project lies or where the initiative lies. The whole organization pulls up their socks to participate and help out in any way they can, and they have for this summit as well. So really thanks to all of our staff. Look forward to our further discussion. Look forward to Housing Summit 2.0 in the new year, where we can bring you the finalized strategy and hopefully bring forward some projects that will begin to, I say begin, because our work is daunting, that begin to address more affordable homes and more affordable rental units within the city of Markham. So with that, in the spirit of Diwali, I say thank you, because today I saw professionalism, I saw values, I saw beliefs provide a lot of light over darkness to people who are looking to all of us to be able to get their own roof over their head. And so it's been an incredible exercise. And in the spirit of moving forward over the next few weeks, I know it's hard to believe with the wonderful weather that we've certainly had in the last week or so, but I don't think it's too early to say I wish all of you, a very Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, a Happy Kwanzaa, and of course, we all look forward to 2021 and the future, and hope all of us can continue to contribute to make the future much brighter for everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today.